validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt up on the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher constantly, making my own climb. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. Whoa. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. Wow. We're on, what is it, Friday? We're on Friday night. Look, days is getting ahead of me and behind me at the same damn time. We do not go live with, well, hold on, let me tell you, let me try that one more time, because I done messed up my swagger. We're live 7 nights a week, but we do not let the sun rise without going live. That's what I was trying to get you guys to understand. And since we do not let the sun rise without going live, we ask you guys to like and subscribe, and then we ask you guys to mash those reaction buttons, hit the notification button, so that you know that when we're going live, that we're actually live. I have to add more stuff to the membership, the list of things that I put up there for you guys. As run its course, there's quite a few things I'm going to be throwing into the membership to make sure that you guys have all the details that you need to be successful. Now we have, I'm piecing together the structure that we're going to be discussing for Monday, because while we understand that we went back to war, and we understand, okay, how you doing, Fisher? Good to see you. So we understand that we went back to war, so we understand that gas prices are going to go back up. We're going to be looking into some of the other things that have changed over the past couple of weeks, so that we can factor that into what we're looking at as far as our investment opportunities. and our spending habits. So covering different topics every night of the week. We have Sunday, which is questions and comments from the fans. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is business and politics, where Monday we talk about how politics negatively impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money. We have on Tuesdays different ways to make, save, and invest money. Wednesdays we discuss different countries around the world for us to potentially live in and make money. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, today being Friday, we give you guys information about personal development, self-improvement, relationship topics, which is we had a pretty decent one yesterday. And then we have negotiation, socializations, building your brand. And then we start discussing promotions, raises, retirement, forced retirement, severance packages, termination. And then the most important information that is related to your capabilities of building your 20 and 30-year plan. You have to understand the importance of that, and then you have to figure out how to get it done. You know where things are in life, and you have to figure out where you want things to be in life, and what do you got to do to get there. Living life day to day, living life from moment to moment, one step at a time, quarter mile at a time, is never being prepared. You're always living a life of reactivity. You're reacting to whatever comes your way with whatever limited resources you have left. Impulse buying and other such spur of the moment decision making. A lot of people claim YOLO, a life of less structure, because you're able to do more things and accomplish more, I guess, memorable moments in life that a lot of the times have catastrophic side effects towards your near and sometimes long-term future. But then we also have the understanding that there are scenarios where you're not preparing for the type of future that you want. So your future, my future, not the same, but your present for probably 80% of Americans is not anywhere near where you would like your present to be. This is partly what leads to our lifestyle creep behavior, keeping up with the Joneses behavior, charging it to the underhills mentalities, and living life around. All of those terminologies indicate that you're doing more than what you need to do to have the type of lifestyle that you wish you could have, or fake the lifestyle to impress the people that you would prefer to value you a certain way. Now, not always does it work the way you want it to work, and that's one of the reasons why we tell you guys that slow and steady, like Michael said yesterday, could win the race if you are proactively creating long-term satisfaction instead of short-term gratification. And that's why we get into a lot of the topics that we talk about. Today is going to be a very interesting reminiscing style day, because we're going to be talking about a large quantity of survival skills that the Gen Z era, which is individuals between, I want to say, 25 and 35 years old right now, is missing, that Gen X folks, people like 36 to 45, swear by. Okay. So Stephen, you and I are probably in the same, because I'm the last of the dying breed. I'm like part of the back end of the baby boomers, but at the same time, I believe the way it works is like a generation is like 15 to 20 years, and I'm on the back end of that 15, right? So the 80s, late 70s, early 80s was a whole generation that kind of bled into the early to mid 90s, and that generation had a certain lifestyle that existed before the internet in 2009. And the Gen Z era is all the ones that were like 10 through 16 in the internet era, people who were born after the internet was created, who doesn't know what life was like before the internet. That's the Gen Z population, the ones that just hit 20, right? In 2026, that don't know nothing about what life was like before technology was what it is today. We're going to be talking about how that worked out, and what skills that the next generation is missing out on that we probably should start teaching ourselves and teaching our kids and teaching our grandkids. If our kids don't want to learn it, teach them these things. Now, getting into it, Imagine this: if you got a full battery, 4 bars of signal, and a map app that can take you anywhere in the world. If you imagine that lifestyle, because that's where we are right now, what happens when the screen goes dark, when the network vanishes, and the only tools you have left is the one between your ears? Now, that is the moment that you discover the difference between being connected and being capable. It's the moment the analog world reminds you it never really left. And for an entire generation, it's a world that they know by heart. And we're talking about the Gen Xers. We're often called the latchkey kids, born roughly between 1965 and 1980. I told you, it was like I'm like part of the last of a dying breed. So technically, I kind of fall into uh, uh, the beginning of the Gen Zs, but the last of the Gen Xers. But it's a very different definition, right? These guys, us, we grew up in the awkward in between space after analog passed, but before digital dawn, after 8-track tape players, after record players, and before MP3s, right? Before MP4s, before online downloads. Got to understand that. Now, this is the generation that was the last generation to navigate life with paper maps, to fix things because replacing them was a luxury, and to entertain themselves for hours when the only screen in the house had 3 fuzzy channels. And 2 of them, at the very least, was the news. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about which generation is better, because we already know Gen Zs were not nearly as capable as Gen Xers. That's a pointless debate. Gen Z, born into a world of smartphones, has a native fluency in technology. And that's a level that's nothing short of a superpower in modern times. But as for digital systems, for these things to get more and more complex, they also become more and more fragile. A power outage, a network failure, or even a simple banking glitch can wipe out that digital advantage in a flash. That's where the glitchy real world skills that many Gen Xers learned become so critical. These aren't just about wilderness survival. They're about how to function when the convenience systems that we depend on fail. Experts talk about resilience across 4 areas: the physical, the practical, the psychological, and the social. So, through a unique mix of economic recessions and a pre internet childhood, along with a culture of figure that shit out yourself, many Gen Xers developed a tough, almost accidental competence across all 4 areas. And we're going to be covering 5 of them today. So you're going to understand what's going on, because the 5th one is a little bit more unorthodox than anything. So we're going to be looking at 5 skills out of the list that I just mentioned. And these are going to be the low tech, high impact abilities that are becoming dangerously rare in a world that has outsourced its capabilities to the cloud. Now, these are the skills that could make all the difference when things go sideways. The first skill is the one that separates people who can move from people who are trapped. This one is called analog navigation. Okay. Now, this isn't just about being wilderness experts. It's the basic ability to get from A to B without a glowing dot telling you where to turn. Now, for many Gen Xers, this was just life. Before GPS was in everybody's back pocket, there was a glove box compartment that wasn't complete without a folded, torn, probably even coffee-stained paper map of all of the places of relevance that car was going. You had a map of your local city. You had a map of your state. You had a map of a state that you just came from. If you traveled across country, you had maps. Planning a trip, and this is before MapQuest, which we now have Google Maps. This is before MapQuest used to give you the ability, when printers came out, to print out turn-by-turn directions, where you still had a paper map. It was just across 20 or 30 pages of directions to help you get from point A to point B. And this is before that time. So planning a trip meant that you're going to be sitting at the kitchen table, tracing a route with a highlighter and jotting down exit numbers. You built a mental model of the area because you had no other choice. This constant practice developed something deeper than just map reading. It built situational awareness. The latchkey kid experience, which is common for many in this particular generation, meant that you knew your radius, how far you could ride your bike and still get home before the street lights came on. And this is the unofficial curfew for millions of Americans. It wasn't be home by 6 or be home by 9. You had to bring that ass home before the street lights came on. And the street lights came on right before or shortly after sunset. It wasn't necessarily sundown, because sometimes it was still light out, the street lights came on, and sometimes it had been dark for a couple minutes and the street lights start coming on. You see them coming on down the street and you start running back to your house, and you try to be inside the door before the street light next to your house come on, because if mama and them look out the door and the lights is on and you not inside the house, hey, do you know what time it is? Now, back in the day, we used to have wristwatches, and they call them timepieces nowadays. But what we used to have was a clock to make sure that we knew where we was and when we were supposed to get our ass back to where we was. So did you know what time it is? Usually was a very important question back in the day, because if I've got a 45-minute trip and I'm an hour away, I need a 15-minute head start. All right. That's right. You're in trouble now. You get your ass. So you learn to read your environment for clues and pay attention to landmarks, not just storefronts that change every few months, but permanent things like rail lines, water towers, old highway spurs, statues. You learn the logic of the city's grid, right? And that kind of helps you know which directions the lights are going to turn on, so you know which direction to go. Oh, if it ain't go get that belt, it's go get me a switch. Sometimes the belt is better than the switch, not gonna cap. and the reason why sometimes the belt was better than the switch was because if they hit they self trying to hit you, they might stop sooner. But if they breaking that switch on your behind, it hurts you more than it hurts them. No matter what they tell you, it hurts you more than it hurts them. You just got to pay attention to that. Now, I got to tell you, learning, matter of fact, right now, I can tell you that where I'm sitting, I am actually facing north. The east is right here. The west is over there. The south is behind me. The sun rises this direction, sets on that direction. I know exactly where I'm at. Isn't that something? I don't need a compass to do that, right? But Lasky kids, that's what we grew up on. We knew how to travel, how to always face north, how to tell what time it was by looking up in the sky when you didn't have a watch. We couldn't get the exact to the minute time, but we could get an approximate hour. If we facing north and the moon came up at 9 and it's somewhere over this way, it's probably almost midnight. If it's somewhere over this way, it's probably almost 2 o'clock in the morning. When it starts getting over this way some and you start seeing some light coming from that way, it's probably closer to 6 o'clock in the morning. This is how we would assess our timelines, right? And this brings us to the Gen Z gap. It's not a gap of intelligence. It's a gap of practice, because when you grow up with turn-by-turn directions, the brain work for building a spatial map of your surroundings gets outsourced to a satellite. Some research even suggests that over-reliance on GPS may affect how our brains, specifically the hippocampus, handles spatial memory. We're not just following a line on a screen, we risk letting the map building part of our brains get out of practice. So let's imagine a citywide blackout. Power is out, so the cell phone towers are down. Your phone is a brick now. Panic starts to set in. But for someone with analog skills, it's a different ballgame. They pull out a paper map from their car's emergency kit. They orient themselves, not with the satellite, but with the damn sun, just like I was talking about. It rises in the east and it sets in the west. And it's a simple fact that's a very powerful navigation tool. Now, at that point, you need to figure out which direction is north and which direction is south, right? And if you know that it rises on the east and you know that it sets in the west, and you at least have some type of wristwatch clock that's not reliant on the internet, you have the capabilities of seeing what time it is. So if it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun is over here, that's the west. And if that's the west, it's supposed to be north, east, west. So if that's the west and the sun is over here, then you're facing north if it's on your right shoulder. You learn these things. Notice map orientation. We're doing it right now during a live podcast. You can get to a hospital or a loved one's house because they can read the physical world without a problem. He said, GPS is my friend. Have to read my maps. Road maps are cool. If you can get closer to 3-dimensional map, that's actually pretty nifty to look at. But when you start talking about like a full on, like, because you have the map of the country, which doesn't help you get around, but you have a map of your city, you have a map of your state. And when you use the map of your city to help you navigate the map of your state, you start finding yourself in a position where you're like, holy shit, I know where I'm at. I know where I'm going. And we would need more than one map, because you need a more detailed map to help you with your turn-by-turn directions, and then a more broad scale map to go from your starting point to your finish point. And if you were crossing state lines, you would need a state map for each state you're passing through, and sometimes a city map on top of that. He said, got a compass? So everybody's electronic device has a compass function on it. You got to find it. And if you don't find it, you should download one just in case. So even if there's no internet, the compass gives you GPS location. Unless it's operating off a satellite, then it doesn't do shit. You should so what we should do, and I'll probably make a list of these things and put it into the membership. All of the old school, still available tools that you would need to function when things are not functioning normally. You need to have these things accessible to you and store them in a place where they're maintained in good condition, so that when it becomes relevant, you actually have these things on hand. And having them and not bringing them with you doesn't benefit you. So if you have it in your house and you don't take it with you, then it doesn't benefit you. If you have it in your car and you don't take your car with you, it doesn't benefit you. Michael says, had maps for almost every major city in America. Exactly. So not just the whole state. Each one of the major cities where all of the stuff you're trying to accomplish, you would have a city map, another city map, another city map, state map. Because where one map stops, another map starts. And if there's any space in between those two maps, you got the whole larger statewide map to get you from one place to the next. GPS makes delivery much easier, door-to-door service. GPS has improved your ability to get from one place to the next without having to pay attention to a road map. And I'm going to take shots at the women again, because this is a male-driven podcast from the male's perspective. Look, when men used to drive and women used to ride shotgun, and women used to read the road maps and tell the men where to turn the car. That was called teamwork. The most valuable person in the car used to be the person riding shotgun. Now the most valuable person in the car is the person behind the wheel of the car and the AI software that helps them get to where they got to go. So the person riding shotgun is just riding princess because they're not meaningfully aiding in the ability to get the car from where they were to its destination. You know, they get to sit in the front and put their feet on the dashboard. So that's the dynamic that is not functional. Now, the wild part is, because modern American women do not want to be the traditional feminist model woman, where that particular skill set would aid in the ability for the relationship to be successful with cross-country trip or long-distance travel. Technology builds GPS to give you directions because your partner is on their Instagram instead of paying attention to the road. I actually had a buddy of mine, and he swears to God that he knows where he's at, but he never knows where the fuck he's at. Because if I drive, he's playing video games on his cell phone or watching some movie or something like that on his cell phone. And then he's so out of tune to the fact that I'm driving the car, he wants to show me something interesting to him while I'm driving the car. You realize if I take my eyes off the road to look at whatever the fuck you got to show me, that could lead to us crashing and you dying. Like, why not save that shit until after we park the car? So GPS situations help you get from point A to point B. But yes, it will aid in delivery drivers getting to more than one location a lot faster. It does aid with anybody trying to deliver multiple things to multiple different places, because they have a point-to-point direction for each individual location. So if you have 30 stops to make on your route, the GPS can take you to each one of those stops, and you don't have to pay attention to a map. You can pay attention to the road and get where you got to go by yourself, which in the workforce, it reduces the quantity of delivery drivers, because they used to have 2 or 3 people in the vehicle, one to drive, one to give directions, 2 people are going to unload the vehicle, and they probably rotate out. Instead of having 3 people in the vehicle, now you just got 1 and a computer. Speaking of computers, y'all know they've been selling for $1,350 a month is the cost for these robots. Fully functional female robots. Total price is like $15,000, so it's cheaper than a Honda Civic. It's cheaper than an American woman. Fully functional female robot. Trying to told you, not getting one this year, but maybe in 2 years might be a good idea. Because for $15,000, I can have one in here doing all the stuff that I need done, so that I wouldn't need to get it done. And that would be a whole lot more beneficial than trying to get human beings in my house to do the shit that I need them to do, where they don't follow instructions. Michael says, if she's helping, she can ride in the back. Oh, if she ain't helping, she can ride in the back. Oh no, because see, that's one of the funniest things. People don't realize true royalty rides in the back. The help rides in the front. So if you're riding in the front with me, you're supposed to be helping. And if I'm chauffeuring your behind around, we're going to have to change the dynamic of our relationship. But you do make a good point. If she ain't helping, she need to be riding in the back. That's why we call them backseat drivers. He said, now pass me another beer. That's not how you get it done, Micah. Less thinking involved. Well, It's not less thinking, it's less multitasking involved. Because if you're looking at a map, a paper map, you're not paying attention to the road. So if there's a machine telling you where to go, you're able to pay attention to the road. If you've got one that's like turn by turn directions, it's telling you when the turn is coming up so that you're not veering across 4 lanes because you missed your stop. But this is going to be where we find the first unorthodox Gen X trick: address pattern navigation. He said, what you're thinking is a sex bot. Actually, I wasn't thinking it was a sex bot. Ironically, I was hoping that it would be a sex bot, but it actually is a fully functional AI dressed like a corporate CEO woman that is fully functional. They showed that it even has like sweat pores and everything like that, sweat glands showing on. I was like, what? So I haven't done any research on it yet, but apparently they're like $15,000 a pop. So I'm like, well, let me go and see who's making them, where they're being released at. They said that there's like 1 million on back order, so it's not like they're going to be like collectible anytime soon. It's going to be like the Tesla Cybertruck. You will not see a brand new unowned Cybertruck on a Tesla dealership lot because they are on back order for probably another 5 or 10 years. I'm on that list, but I don't know. I might just get my $100 back, or because I was thinking like, oh yeah, I could get me a one of the other models, and then I thought to myself, nah, fuck all that. They got GPS tracking, they got audio tracking, they got biometric scans, and all of this other shit. Nah, I'm not fucking with that bullshit. My car wouldn't even work because I gotta wear these glasses, and they're doing like retina scans and shit. You're not gonna be able to see my eyes. Like, nope, that's okay. I'll deal with the 1960 something or other. Because I'll pick one up at the garage sale. You're gonna pick up one of the used sex bots from a garage sale? I don't know, man. That's how chlamydia gets transferred from person to person. Anyway, if we start talking about the address pattern navigation skill, in many gridded North American cities, there's a hidden logic to the house numbering. They often increase as you move away from central, which is 0 point. And odd numbered addresses are often on the side of the street, like the south or the east, with even numbers on the other side of the street. So if you learn this simple rule for your specific city, you can figure out your general direction in an unfamiliar neighborhood. You also recognize that in most cities that there will be a central street, central drive, central avenue, wherever the numbers start over, where you're going to go from all the address being west something or other to all of the addresses being east something or other. You're going to have a central street that severs that dynamic. You also, more often than not, especially in low-income neighborhoods, going to see the difference between north something or other and south something or other be severed by a Martin Luther King Jr. drive. This doesn't happen everywhere, but in a lot of places where people do the switch up of changing a street and naming it after Martin Luther King, it's typically right before the low-income community in the south side of town. So you see Central dividing east and west, and MLK Drive dividing north and south. Some people gonna be riding around looking for that and be like, dang, he was right. He said, if you get a disease from a sex bot, someone's been cheating on you. Not if you got it from a garage sale, my guy. You said you were gonna go pick the bot up from a garage sale. That means that you're not the first owner. And I'm just gonna be real with you. We already have that problem with human women. We don't need that problem with a robot. Robots should not have a problem with maintaining virtue. It should be untested, fresh out of the box. Now, when we start talking about the grid, it's going to be like an internal compass that's going to be built into itself with no technique required. Because you can just kind of tell when you're on the east side of town. You kind of tell when you're on the west or north side of town. You kind of tell which direction you're supposed to be driving, because if you're supposed to be headed east and the sun is in front of you and it's early morning, you're headed east. But if you're supposed to be headed east and it's in the afternoon and the sun is in front of you, you're going in the wrong direction. You got to turn around and go back the other way. Now, another trick that is forgotten: infrastructure navigation. Many Gen Xers learn to navigate by things that don't change, right? So we've got railroad tracks, industrial parks, rivers, and old highways and overpasses. While modern navigators might look for familiar coffee shops, the analog navigator uses the bones of the city as their guide. For example, a school that used to always be there, even if the school gets turned into a prison, that building is still there. A school that gets turned into a courthouse, that building is still there. Been there 75 years. You know, when you start thinking about the bones of a city, the courthouse, um, the the uh, the local park or playground, like we said before, the campgrounds, right? Like in my neighborhood, there's a murder house next door where an old couple killed themselves. Like it was like a reenactment of Chris Benoit. The husband took out the wife and then took himself out. So when we give directions, it's like, well, you know, if you go 3 blocks past murder house, it is what it is. So here's a challenge, because we're like 30% into the show. For 1 week, try to get somewhere new using only a static map. At best, a screenshot or a printed copy. No live tracking, no GPS signals, no turn-by-turn directions. Pay attention to street names. You're going to find that there's some really weird-ass street names out there. Pay attention to landmarks. When you're a passenger, put your phone away and try to follow the route, looking out the window at the stuff that passes by. That old farm on the block, from like, it's been there the whole time we've been there. Probably 100-acre piece of property, beautiful house, 30 horses out front. Every time you pass by, there's either horses in the evening or cows in the morning. But when you pass by, that house is always there. You know where you're at when you start seeing familiar territory, right? But if you're paying attention to your phone the whole way, you don't know where you are and you don't know where you've been. And that's how you find yourself making laps around town on a regular basis. Well, mile markers work on the interstate. If you and truth, even in modern times, even with GPS, you should pay attention to the mile markers, because if your car breaks down, you've got to be able to explain to somebody else exactly where you are. Because the GPS will tell you how to get to where you're going, but the GPS is not going to give you the address of your current location if you're on an interstate, because addresses belong to buildings. And if you're not near a building, then you're not near an address. So mile markers are important, but a mile marker is not going to help you if there's no interstate. There's no mile marker on the back street. If you're taking a country road, we call them country roads like Route 66, there's no mile marker there. It's just endless road. If you pass a speed sign, it's just endless road. You might be 15 minutes past the last cow. You might be 30 minutes past the last house. You might be 20 minutes away from the next house. You might have left the last gas station 35 minutes ago, and you've been on this one direction street for so long. And you have to understand how long you have to drive before you see something else that you recognize. So I mean, mile markers is one thing, but landmarks is another, because landmarks is not necessarily it could be an old tree that you recognize. It could be an old tree. It could be a burned down building that's never been renovated. You know, it could be anything that has always been there, that lets you know that from this point there's only so much more to go before wherever you got to make your turn or wherever your next destination is. Either landmarkers, or even, well, landmarkers are not in every city. So Let's get that straight. I know you used to be a trucker. Some of the major roadways that are interstate roads or highway roads, inner city, those have mile markers because the highway runs straight through a specific city. But there are not mile markers everywhere. And there are not mile markers like right now where I am. There isn't a mile marker for 4 hours. So I can drive in a specific direction and never cross a mile marker, or I can get on an interstate and cross a mile marker every mile, every couple miles. So because there isn't mile markers everywhere, mile markers are good. And I'm not saying don't pay attention to mile markers. I'm saying you have to find things when mile markers don't exist. But mile markers is a good example. So landmarks are going to be everywhere, even in cities. Even in the inner city, landmarks are going to be everywhere because that's going to be the object that has always been there the whole time you're here. Some of the first things you recognize might be a fat dude in a jumpsuit with a pig head in front of a Piggly Wiggly. That kind of stuff is going to be like the first thing that you see closest to the street, or the giant Michelin tire, or the Ronald McDonald House. Stuff that you see that's like a landmark. Something that's always been there that might be there for an extended period of time. Those are the things that you remember. So ironically, when some of the states in the South started tearing down the Confederate statues to try to make it more racially better, I thought that was horrible for them to tear that stuff down. I don't really care how bad this country was because the entire world was built on the blood of somebody else, not just the sweat and tears. Somebody got slaughtered for us to be as successful as we are. That's the way it happened in America. That's the way it happened in China. That's the way look at Germany. Like, it is what it is. So, for them to tear down those statues, what they did was they tore down landmarks where we could have said, oh, well, if you go down to the General Lee statue and make a right, you can't say that anymore. Now you have to say you got to go down to where the General Lee statue used to be and make a right. Special shout out to Daniel. Michael says, a building on the corner, that's a landmark. Damn right. Especially if it's a unique building on the corner. Damn right. What's up? Happy Friday. Let's put my statues back. I be saying, look, I want them to bring Uncle Ben's back to the Uncle Ben's rice. They just gonna change the name to Minutes Right. I want them to put Aunt Your Mama back on the dang syrup bottle. Try me. They over here taking out all the best parts of the Gen Z childhood. I don't even buy syrup no more because I bought Aunt Your Mama syrup and ain't no more Aunt Your Mama syrup. So I'm like, well, fuck the syrup then. I used to buy Uncle Ben's rice, ain't no more Uncle Ben's rice. So now what I'm gonna go get? Jasmine rice. And it's a whole new world. So I got jasmine rice. He said you can't erase the past, so why cover it up? Because if you cover it up, then you don't have to feel bad about what your ancestors did to other people. That's a personal problem, not a societal problem, because the rest of society don't give a fuck. So that's why they would cover it up, though. That's why they would cover it up. Because, it wasn't no black people petitioning to tear all that stuff down. Wasn't no black people petitioning to change the name of certain stuff. We love Aunt Your Mama and Uncle Ben's rice. Shoot. Yeah, we had chicken and waffles. Shoot. With the Aunt Your Mama syrup and a side of Uncle Ben's rice. It be tripping. He said, Auntie's Jeremy. So if you look up your city's address grid system online, you'll find it's 0 point. This isn't just a fun fact. It's a layer of resilience that you guys have to have. It's known. It's going to be knowing that if the screens go dark on your phone, you can still find your way around. And that's very important, especially if something happens and somebody gets hurt and now you don't have a functioning phone. You have to know how to get yourselves from point A to point B. If your car breaks down and somebody needs a doctor, you got to know how to get them to one. How far is the nearest? You do realize that we can criticize a scary movie, but don't have the first survival skill to get past normal life. We can criticize the plot development. We can criticize the decision-making skills of, like, go watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you've seen it twice, you are like, man, I wouldn't have went that way. I would have went this way. Man, I would have went from this way. I would have went that way. I wouldn't have went back into the house. But ask yourself though, who keeps spare keys in the car? Who uh, 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 disconnects their battery? And if you disconnect your battery so that they don't wear the power down on your car, how are you going to make a fast giveaway? Who leaves the engine running? And then if the engine's running, you got to have a full tank of gas. And then if the engine's running, who's going to prepare? You can't prepare for everything. You see what I'm saying? He says, I don't feel bad. I wasn't even alive. What you mean? You 77, 77, 72, 73, 75 years old, 71, 78. I'm trying to put you into the early grade. I'm about to say you're 80 years old, but you was like 1950 something. So what you mean you wasn't even alive? You was alive. You wasn't old enough to impact nothing, but you seen it happen. And you was like, glad it wasn't me. And look, I don't blame you, because if I was alive back in the days and I was seeing what was going on, I'd have been saying the same thing. Because when that boy was swinging from the tree in St. Louis earlier this year, I was like, dang, first of all, I didn't know they were still lynching folks. And second, glad I'm not in St. Louis. The second skill is going to be about fighting back against a disposable world. Hands-on repair and salvage is something that we have to start remembering how to get done. I know. If it's broke, just get another one. It is so much cheaper to replace it than to repair it. And the reason why that is because manufacturers make more money on selling more products than what it does with you replacing parts on the product. The nuts, bolts, and gears of a ceiling fan is way cheaper in profits to the manufacturer than you buying a whole fucking ceiling fan. But the labor cost to put another ceiling fan in, the time and effort for a mechanic to put another ceiling fan in, since you don't know how to fix your own ceiling fan, that makes the price of repairing it more expensive than the price of replacing it. And manufacturers did that on purpose, because instead of someone else making a shit ton of money off of fixing the manufacturer's product, the manufacturer made it so hard for the object to be repaired that it becomes more expensive. So now you got to replace it. That's what they're doing with the cars. They're making it so hard for you to fix your own car, so you have to buy a new car so that it doesn't fuck up. It's a disposable world. Everything is disposable, even us. Well, philosophically speaking, yes. But when we start talking about the disposable world, we're talking about the difference between one-time usage versus reusable items. Take, for example, y'all usually see me watch a show and go through like 3 or 4 bottles of water. Now, disposable world, I'm throwing away at least 3 or 4 bottles of water per show. Now, if we were going to be living the way we were living in the 70s, then them 5 bottles of water would have got refilled and put back in the fridge to be reused a second time. Humans are not disposable. Humans are expendable. And you have to know the difference between the two. Disposable is going to be something that is only utilized one time. Expendable is something that doesn't hold enough value to maintain it. And that's going to be the difference. So the to corporate world, to big business, to big pharma, to billionaire status, we are expendable, meaning They can use us for as long as we are valuable to them, and then when we're no longer valuable to them, they can let whatever happens to us happen to us. Expendable. Disposable means that humans would be tossed away after one usage. No one's ever tossed away after one usage. Even the Mexicans that would build the house and then get deported after the fact. You would come and build the house and right before you got paid. So that means you were there for 2, 3, 4 days. That's expendable, not disposable. Building on the house, and then right before it's time to get paid, ICE comes and gets them and ships them off. That's expendable, not disposable. It says we're walking dollar signs to the world. Yeah, but we do that to ourselves though. Society dictates that we have to pay for convenience. We pay the cost to be the boss. The lazier you want to be in your life, the more money you have to spend to do it. You buy technology to replace the things that you normally would do on your own. You don't cook, you buy TV dinners, you order takeout, you get delivery. You don't clean, you have a Shark vacuum cleaner that's an AI that travels the house cleaning up the floor for you. You don't wash clothes by hand anymore. You have a washing machine for that. You don't wash the dishes by hand anymore. You have a dishwasher for that. You don't cook the food on the stove. If you are going to cook food at the house, you got crock pots for that. You spend more money to be lazy. We don't write people's numbers down and memorize everybody's phone numbers. Back in the day, we had 5 or 10 important numbers that we always would memorize, and we would be able to recite them like our social security number, right? But these days, most people don't know what their driver's license number is. They don't know what their driver's license number is. Most people don't know, right? It's on their driver's license. They carry it with them 24/7, and they don't know what's on it because we're lazy. We hand it to somebody else and let them type the information in. We type somebody's phone number in, give it a name, save it, forget it. We don't even remember it after that. We look the person's name up, however we identify that person, right? So our ability to be lazy, our cognitive functions that allows us to retain important information goes out the window. But we're walking dollar signs because we do that to ourselves. Is I be drinking from a hose back then? Yep. Mommy and them used to take your ass outside and play. Usually around 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, they'll put your ass out. Because you got to get up in the morning, get you some breakfast, get your bath in, everything like that, put some fresh clothes on, and then get out. Half the time you ain't even get a chance to watch morning cartoons when we was kids. I know you was like 30 years before me. Y'all ain't have TV. It was just get out. There wasn't even no early morning cartoons. You get out and don't come back until the street lights come on, but you better be back before the street lights come on. So ain't no coming in and out of the house. If you outside, you stay outside. If you came inside before it got dark, like if you came in at like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you stuck in the house for the rest of the day. So you wanted something to drink, go to garden hose on the side of the house. The only ones that was allowed to come inside was the girls because they had to go to the bathroom. Boys, behind a tree somewhere. So I wanted to be lazy. I would go on welfare. Oh yeah. So the bottom 30% of Americans. But being lazy doesn't mean that you have to be broke. Being lazy, you could be a billionaire and still be lazy. But billionaires earn the right to be lazy with all the wealth that they've generated over their lifetime. Okay, so we identify being lazy as wisely delegating responsibilities to others, but ultimately you are putting your responsibility on somebody else so that you don't have to do it, which is somewhat being lazy, right? Now, when we start talking about repair and salvage, it's going to be the ability to look at something broken and see it as a puzzle to solve, not just as a problem to replace. Gen X grew up in a world where just buy a new one wasn't always the first or best answer. Things were often built to be serviced. Cars came with the space under the hood and dense repair manuals that taught you everything from changing your oil to swapping a transmission. It was expected that you'd at least try to fix it yourself first before you hired somebody else to do it. And if nobody could fix it, then you would go buy another one. It's created a culture of basic mechanical literacy. Unclogging a drain, resetting the circuit breakers, or figuring out why the lawnmower wouldn't start. Programming your VCR. This is stuff that we used to do back in the day. Just as important, this fostered a salvage mindset, not a hoarder mindset, a salvage mindset. When an appliance finally died, it wasn't just trash, it was a source of parts. I've got extra washing machines over here, just in case. You take one apart, harvesting screws, wires, springs, motors, whatever was on that that would function on something else. And this led to the sacred institution of the junk drawer. No, that doesn't work, Michael. So you imagine that you use it and then it stops working. And it stops working because you used it. And you would assume that it runs out of gas. But after you put gas in it, if it still doesn't start, what's wrong with it? It could be the spark plugs. It could need the 2-cycle engine oil. It could be something wrong with the ripcord. The fuel line could be clogged. You might have to change out the fuel filter. Yeah, there's a lot of things that can happen, not just put gas in it. Sarcastically speaking, you think, well, lawnmower doesn't work. It might need gas. Logic dictates if you haven't used it and it's got gas, something's wrong with it. When we identify broken, we identify the fact that it meets the requirements of a functional item and it's not functioning. So put gas in it is like a sarcastic way of being stupid. So grabbing the troubleshooting guide. Okay, but troubleshooting guide is going to have you go through all of the things that I just mentioned. Checking checking the spark plugs, making sure that it fires off, checking the fuel line, making sure that the fuel injectors work, checking the 2-cycle engine oil, make sure it's got oil in it, make sure that the fuel filter isn't clogged up, change out the fuel filter, check the fuel line, make sure there's no leaks in it, check the ripcord, make sure that it's functioning well. Like all of these things are all attached to the what if with a lawnmower not working. It's not just simply, well, a lawnmower doesn't broke. It's broke. I'm just gonna go spend $150 to buy another. Because if it's electric, it's a plug-in. Okay. So let's think for a second, Michael. So 1984, how many times did you find a plug-in electric lawnmower? Because I mean, you're I know you're trying to be funny, but you're kind of defeating the educational purpose here. Because in 1984, when did you find an electric plug-in lawnmower? We just did have gas-powered lawnmowers from the push lawnmower, where it was just the wheels and the blades, and you would use manual power and push it to cut the grass. And that came after the sling blade, where you had the sling blade, and you just have to use that out there to cut the grass. So where did the plug-in electric lawnmower comes from when we're talking about a gas-powered lawnmower that's not functioning the way it's supposed to function, right? You said step-by-step instructions are easy. They're not easy. It's not easy. You can make it easy. Yeah, you're correct. It's not funny. Because when you was a teenager, right, in the 80s, right, which was a long time ago, right? When the fuck did you see an extension cord coming from a damn lawnmower that was outside? You didn't see that. Exactly. So you would. We're talking about Gen Xers, man. We're not talking about 2026. You'll be surprised how many times this happens. No, I would not be surprised how many times this happens. Because you have to realize that some people do not have the the common sense that God gives the best of us, because they are sheltered from responsibility. And being sheltered from responsibility, people perform in a more incompetent fashion. They're quick to give up. They're quick to say, I don't know. And if they want to do it in one specific way, if they can't do it in that specific way, they just give up. They just give up. They don't even apply themselves, because they do not have it in their mentality to find another way. They do not have it in their mentality to think outside the box. They do not have the mentality to troubleshoot. So yes, the first thing you would do is check the gas. The second thing you would do is check the spark. The third thing you would do is make sure that the oil and everything is in there. You know, just to make sure that all of what is supposed to be in there to make it run is in there. And you would test the cord and see if the cord has tension on it. Make sure that it's able to pull the ripcord and spin the motor, start it up. You would test these things, you know, because there's more than one reason why it's not working, or there's more than one reason that could be why it's not working, right? You said Gen X can't even dial a rotary phone. What you mean? You must be talking about Gen Zs, because I grew up in the rotary phone scenario. We had rotary phones before we had before the voicemail with the tape recorder, the cassette player came out. We had the rotary phone, right? And after we had the rotary phone, we had the push button phone with the little keypad on it where you had to hook up the receiver. And after that, that's when we had the voice recorder for voicemail, where when people would call and leave a message, where you would listen to the recording, listen to what people had to say when they leave their message, and if it was important, we would pick up the phone and answer the phone, right? And in those situations, because the voice recorder wouldn't stop, it would actually record the conversation that you're having on the phone. That was like one of the first wiretapping scenarios that we had, self-wiretap situation. Let somebody call in, pick up the phone, talk to them on the phone. We had a little cassette tape that you would put in there to make it happen. So what you're referring to is Gen Zs wouldn't know anything about it. Gen Zs wouldn't know what a rotary phone is. Gen Zs wouldn't know what pre like 2000s lifestyle would be like. They wouldn't know anything about that. They hear about it on the news, but they wouldn't know anything about it. But when we start thinking about that junk drawer, it's going to be a chaotic mess of random parts that wasn't a sign of this organization. It was a micro hardware store, an inventory of solutions for problems that you hadn't even had yet. And I know that even right now, I've got what would be perceivably considered a junk drawer in my kitchen right now, where it's a drawer specifically. It's got power cords, it's got battery packs, tape. There's all kind of stuff in this drawer. Screws. I got all kinds of stuff in that drawer. And since I started using that drawer, I have gone in there and find value in what is stored in that drawer, taking things out and utilizing it to fix things around the house, right? The Gen Z gap here, again, is going to be one of environment. The modern world runs on convenience, like I told you. Laziness. A leaky faucet, there's an app to hire a plumber. Glitchy phone, you're encouraged to upgrade it. Many modern devices are sealed shut with proprietary screws intentionally designed to be impossible for a user to repair their phone. This replace, don't repair culture means that there are fewer chances to develop what some call mechanical intuition. The feel for how physical things work and how to diagnose them when they don't. Right? And this runs us into let's talk about a crisis scenario, for example. Major storm hits, power is out, roads are blocked, and emergency services are swamped. Pipe bursts under your sink. The pros are not coming, at least not for a few days. For someone without repair skills, their home can quickly become a huge problem. But for a person with basic know-how, it's a moment of action. They know how to at least shut off the main water valve. They can have the tools and the confidence to patch a simple leak, at least long enough for a professional to come and do it better. They can keep their home safe and functioning. in situations where things don't work the way they want them to. And this brings us to a couple of unorthodox layers of this skill. The first is what you might call manual literacy. A YouTube tutorial is great when the internet works, but reading a complex technical diagram or a wiring schematic is a different skill. It teaches you the understanding and logic of the machine, allowing you to troubleshoot devices that you've never seen before. Yeah, go turn off the water from the main valve. Well, okay, so here's a scenario, because you're thinking, ah, see, I try to wrap my mind around your sarcasm, Mike. Um, so think about this, okay? Um, your toilet is overflowing. It's not coming from the tank. Your toilet is overflowing. I mean, you can run outside and turn off the main valve. Duh. Not going to stop the toilet from overflowing. Yeah. You're going to have to do a little bit more than that, buddy. Let's imagine another thing. Um, let's say that your main faucet breaks in your kitchen sink. You say, go turn off the water from the main. There's one outside somewhere in the yard, but there's also the little knobs on both the hot and cold directly up underneath the kitchen sink. Special shout out to OG Kicks. You weren't paying attention to the Michael, you weren't even paying attention to the scenario. The scenario was in a hypothetical situation where the storm hits, shit starts going crazy, emergency services are not available, a plumber's 3 days out, you start having a leak, and you now can fix the leak. It could be a leak because one of the pipes broke, but it also could be a leak because, like, there's a hole in the roof. It could be a leak because one of the windows broke. And your capabilities to know how to fix issues at your house without the plumber is more valuable of a skill set than your ability to figure out how to call a plumber when your phone doesn't have any service. Because you got to remember, here in 2026, everybody has a cell phone. Very few people have a house phone as a landline, which means if the cell phone towers go out, you can't call a plumber. So even if there was an accessible plumber, if nobody has power and everybody has a cell phone, how are you going to call the plumber? Because you have no network. Turn the water off from the toilet. Well, you're getting close, man. Go under the sink, turn off the water. See, now you're catching up to the main story. Fix the leak, go to Ace, Ace Hardware. Well, you're supposed to have, when we were talking about the jump jar, you're supposed to have a reasonable quantity of remaining parts lying around from things that messed up before that you can utilize to patchwork it until you can go to Ace Hardware. Because if your septic tank was overflowed, or I'm going to say something like your septic tank is not doing what it's supposed to do, or at least your sewage is not supposed to be doing, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's clogged. Somebody may have tried to flush, and now instead of it going down the drain, everything's coming out of the toilet and the shower and the sink, like your sewage is backflowing into the house. You can turn off the valve. It doesn't solve the problem. Now, you might, if you have the skill set, if you've had this experience before, you might think, shit, go to the garage, grab the garden hose, and plug it to the house. Go find the sewage release valve, shove the garden hose in there, pump it full of fluid, and force the pressure into the sewer, which then allows for all of the stuff in your house to flow into the sewer line. Now, you'd pay somebody $3,000 to come and do that. But for you, it would probably be $150 worth of garden hose. So, yeah, you can find help to get stuff done. Yeah, you can find help. You can pay somebody to do it for you, but you could have also done it for yourself. All you had to do was like think before you act. Now, the second thing is going to be field uh, expedient mindsets. Field expedient mindsets. Now, this is a military inspired idea where you see every object not just for what it is, but for what it could be. Like I used to use a 1988 Toyota Corolla FX as a tow truck because that little fucker had enough power to pull SUVs out of anywhere. So I just will hook some tow straps on it and then snatch it. He said, run a snake down the line. Okay, there we go. Good job. But that would mean that you would have to have a snake at your house. You would have to have the equipment, which means that you probably experienced it for the first time, bought the stuff, and then kept it, stored it in your garage or stored somewhere in your house, so that the next time it happened, you would go and grab a snake. And you would try that first to try to snake out the line before you call the plumber. Because if you were able to unclog your drains before, you're going to try to unclog your drains again before you go and get a professional. There you go. So a piece of scrap metal isn't just junk. It's a potential pry bar. A broken broom handle is a splint. Clutter becomes capability. This mindset shifts you from a passive consumer to an active, resourceful person who can shape their physical world. Got one from a garage sale. Good job. So here's a challenge for Gen Zers. The next time something simple is in your house that breaks, before you toss it out, take it apart. Just see what's in it. You don't even have to fix it. Just try to understand it. Then pick one basic home repair skill and learn it. Start small. Learn how to safely shut off your main water and gas lines without actually having to do it. Well, you could do it just to make sure that it works, but don't break the valve because that costs a lot of money to fix. Learn how to unclog sinks without using harsh chemicals, because a lot of people like to go and buy a bunch of Drano and stuff like that, but you could actually do it manually with, the equipment that we were talking about. He said the new silver is copper. I'll start following that. I'll put that into the membership, and because I have gold, silver, copper, platinum, and uranium, and I'll start following copper, and then I'll let you guys know what the copper value is. You want to buy a basic toolkit and a repair manual for your car. If you've got a car that has a repair manual that goes to it, because if you have a Tesla, you probably aren't going to be able to do that. The goal isn't to become a master mechanic. It's to replace the thought that I need to call someone with the question of, could I fix this or figure this out myself? That question is going to be the start of self-reliance. Now, granted, there's going to be a threshold of complication to repairs before you decide, I'm not going to waste my effort on this, I'm going to hire a professional. But you should be able to change a tire, change the brakes, change the oil, change the transmission fluid. You should be able to change our spark plugs, change the battery, change our headlights, tail lights. You should be able to change out the instrument panel on your doors, change out your speakers, not necessarily to put in big ass JBL subwoofers, but to make sure that the standard stock speakers fit in the vehicle the way they're supposed to. You should be able to do really the minimalistic maintenance on your vehicle so that you can keep your vehicle in a functioning position. Oh, the copper is $6.28 per pound. That's not a lot of money, but we'll follow that one and see how well it works, because that technically is 10% of the value of silver, which is like 1% of the value. Well, right now, because gold isn't going as much. Gold is like 4,500 right now, so silver is not at 10% anymore. But silver used to be 10% of the value of gold, and if copper is 10% of the value of silver, You can tell when one is outperforming, which is a good time to sell, so that when it does dip, you can buy back in and make you a profit. Third, third skill set is going to be survival skills. And this survival skill is going to be one of the most fundamental ones. The ability to feed yourself when the grocery store is not an option. Now, this isn't about cooking from scratch. Not many women know how to cook from scratch anymore. This is going to be about smart pantry management and the discipline to make resources last. Before Michael says it, he's going to scream MREs. We're talking about being able to make sure that you have reasonably accessible, edible food in your house and the ability to utilize it in a rationalized fashion so that it lasts longer than intended. This is a survival skill set. If you were in Louisiana in 2005, it was 4 months before you had new food shipped back into the state. And whatever groceries was in your house, you had to make that shit last. That is survival skills. Most people in modern 2026 buys for 2 weeks worth of food, probably 3, and then 2 weeks in, they buy 2 more weeks worth of food and overlap so that they don't necessarily run out that often. But they do not, how you doing, Rosie? But they do not prepare for the circumstances of when there is absolutely no way to gain access to more food. People who live up north buy more food for disasters and potentially snowy season. So they might have extra stuff around the house when times get cold. But the average person who doesn't have the type of climate change that guarantees you to be stuck in a house for 2 or 3 months, they are not prepared. What happens when a natural disaster, a hurricane or something like that happens, earthquake or whatever happens, and now your city is not accessible for 6 to 8 weeks? What are you going to do if all you have is 5 packs of ramen noodles still in your fridge? Is that starvation for most people? Probably where that's going to land. We're all eating at Xander's. No, no. I treat my house like a zombie apocalypse. When people start coming to my door, I'm shooting. I'm not taking in no survivors. I'm not taking in no survivors. It surprisingly, I have yet to put a black flag outside of my house, but I should put a black flag outside of my house so that people know no survivors come off of this land. If you do not have an invitation, you will be carried out. You might have walked on, but you will be carried off. It is a word to the wise. So don't think that we're going to go by Xander house. No, sir. No, sir. So for Gen Xers, for many of the Gen Xers, this is going to be just part of growing up. Dining out was a rare treat. Cooking at home was the default. Many were the children or grandchildren of those who lived through leaner times. And that culture and the memory of that culture with scarcity was still alive in the household and taught to the next generation. And this showed up in practical ways. He says most cities only have about 3 weeks of food if a disaster happens. Actually, to be honest with you, most cities only keep the 3 weeks of food to sell because of the shelf life of disposal that is mandatorily required by the FDA to prevent people from being sold spoiled food. But see, the non-perishable foods, canned goods, dried foods like ramen noodles and other such things, like even certain cereals, there are certain things that would last for months at your house. It's only going to be on the shelf at the grocery store for 2 or 3 weeks. But we go to the store and we do not buy, more often than not, the things that would last in our house for 6 to 9 months. A loaf of bread is only going to last you for 1 or 2 weeks. A gallon of milk is going to spoil inside of 2 or 3 weeks. The non-perishable items, stuff that you could put in the cabinets and forget about it, and when you run out of food in the fridge, the shit in the shelf is still there. That stuff we don't buy very often, and that's just poor customer choice. Poor customer choice. You're buying meats. Like most Americans do this, and I don't understand why. Why, when you think the world is about to end, are you going to buy all of the most expensive meats that are only going to last you the first 48 hours of a disaster? Because if the power goes out, the meat's going to spoil. You buy 50 pounds of meat, like you're not going to survive if you don't have meat. But if you bought like 5,000 cans of canned goods, you'd be good for a couple years. Like, I don't understand where people's lack of logic is with this. You know, they feel like toilet paper, hand sanitizers, and ground beef is like the only important things that you get from the grocery store. But when you start preparing for a power outage, ground beef is the last thing that should be on your grocery list, because it's only going to give you a day or two without power before it goes bad. So typically, it might stay in your deep freezer and it might stay in your refrigerator until the power goes off. And then you have until it thaws for you to cook it. Once it thaws, it's got to get eaten now. It's got to get cooked up and eaten now. But all of the canned goods and all of the dried foods that stay on the shelf forever, spaghetti, pasta, macaroni shells, that stuff doesn't change its condition until you add it to water. So why don't we have a shit ton of that in our house? Crazy, right? So some of the practical ways that the old school survival skills come up is stretching a meal into soups and casseroles, actually eating leftovers, and knowing how to make a filling meal from simple staples like rice, beans, and potatoes. When you recognize, like, for example, old school would have had Thanksgiving dinner, right? And from Thanksgiving dinner, we would have had leftovers. Most people remember that part. But from the leftovers, if there was a little bit of a bunch of different sides, we might take that and then put it into a casserole. Some might take the bones from the turkey. Instead of throwing the turkey away, like with all the bones and stuff on it, or instead of giving it to the dog, you might take the turkey and put it into a pot of boiling water, boil it down to a broth, boil all of the remaining turkey off of the bone, and then take the bone out. And now you have the turkey broth with whatever turkey that was left on the bone, and you can turn that into a soup. People don't think about stuff like that because it is a eat in the moment scenario. Stocking the pantry wasn't prepping, it was just being frugal. Right? He says fresh meat year round, the fish in the river, bears, deers, and elk in the backyard. Well, maybe at your house, but that's not at everybody else's house. Most of the time, people don't have a place to go fishing. Women prefer to date bears than to date men, so they're probably not going to go and hunt a bear. And then deer and elk, outside of hunting season, is not what you're supposed to be going for when you are not in a natural disaster. And then when you're in a natural disaster, more often than not, the deer, the elk, and the bear all run and go hide. So you're not going to have deer in your backyard during a hurricane. You're not going to have bears and elk in your backyard during a hurricane. They're going to be somewhere else seeking shelter during the hurricane. So you're not actually going to have those things, but I understand your imagination there. He said, learn to can your own food. That's not even wise at all. That's a terrible thought process. I can believe that if in the event that, let's say, for example, we took Michael's cabin in the woods thing, because he always wants to do a cabin in the woods. If you're going to do a cabin in the woods and you're going to do, like, put your fruits and vegetables and stuff in a can and Learn how to make a can and seal the can up and put it up on a shelf. If that's what you want to do in your retirement, go ahead. In modern 2026 time, even with Gen Xer skill sets, the average Michael doesn't even have the skill set to know how to preserve peas, corn, tomatoes, other such things, even in a regular mason jar, without it spoiling and fermenting and potentially turning into some type of cider or wine. Manufacturers pre-seal these things, vacuum seal them, where they're not exposed to external oxygens, which prevents them from spoiling in these cans, which is why they're non-perishable items. So instead of you learning how to can your own food, learn how to collect canned food, since it's already pre-canned for you, and that would actually make things a lot more better for you. He says, make turkey sandwiches for lunch the next day. Smart, yes. Turkey sandwiches. So after Thanksgiving dinner, make turkey sandwiches. Yes, that's actually a good way to go about doing stuff. And when you run out of meat to make the turkey sandwich, you make a broth. You know, yeah. And when you have leftover sides, you make a casserole, shepherd's pie, stuff like that. Now, the Gen Z experience has been shaped by a culture of incredible food convenience. Delivery apps, meal kits, and an ocean of pre-made foods have made outsourcing cooking totally normal. And modern life, with smaller apartments and frequent moves, often works against keeping a large stocked pantry because it is harder to move when you have 12 boxes of groceries. Some younger people may be less likely to keep sustainable foods on reserve, which negatively impacts their ability to be successful. Air dry them in the sun. No, that's how you turn grapes into raisins. Or prunes. You're trying to get you some prunes. But you don't air dry peas or corn or tomatoes in order to preserve them the way you would see canned peas, canned corn, or canned diced tomatoes. But that just proves my point. Now, picture a supply chain stop. Freak snowstorm. Trucker strike like the one that happened in Dallas earlier this year, or local unrest like what was happening in Memphis. Makes going to the store impossible. When ICE agents had the riots and they're doing drive-bys on the block and you're afraid to go outside because they might knock you off. Shelves are going to be empty in hours. For those who rely on daily grocery runs or nightly food deliveries, the situation starts to get serious really fast. But for a person with resource discipline, it's a challenge, not a catastrophe, right? They're going to have special shout out to Dylan. He says, I just buy wine and turn them into grapes. Dylan came in after the fact. We were talking about the ideology of survival skills from the Gen X generation that's different from the survival skills of a modern Gen Z person. And we were talking about the difference between Gen Xers' capabilities of storing, stretching, and preserving foods for longer periods of time as a self-preservation tactic versus modern society's easy in, easy out with their food situation. And then Michael started coming up with some very outrageous hypotheticals that was unrealistic in even the past versus in the present, like sun drying your vegetables when you're supposed to be trying to store them and not allow them to age and ferment. So we weren't playing a guessing game on how to fuck up your food supply. We were talking about not knowing. We don't have the skill set in modern 2026 to know how to properly preserve our food more effectively than the manufacturers are already pre-packaging the food when we can go and buy it from the grocery store. So instead of learning how to can up your own canned goods, you just go to the store and buy some damn canned goods that's already pre-canned. That's what we're talking about. He says, boy, I'm glad nobody lived before us. We would have never survived. Well, people lived before you. It's just that um, they had different ways of going about doing things. Um, because, like, for example, like back in the day, before they started making laws about hunting, you could just go out in your backyard, just knock off a deer. But now, if you release your firearm inner city, it doesn't matter if it's on your land or not. They give you a ticket for discharging your firearm. So even if you killed an animal in your backyard uh, for substance, you'd get a citation for using your firearm. You'd have to use a crossbow, right? He said, "Oh boy, Gen Z. Well, I'm a millennial." Yeah, so that's kind of where we were going with that. So there's a lot of skills that are lost to the millennials or the Gen Zs who are not aware of the way things used to be back in the day. He says, today we live a life of convenience. That's what I was saying before. So if a link goes missing, chaos rules. That's true. That is true. That is true. He says, I think sun tried doesn't preserve. I think you need to pickle them. Now, dropping it into a jar of vinegar, that's one way to delay its ability to rot, but you would have to remove external factors like the oxygen and bacteria that allows for it to even continue to ripen and rot or mold while inside of the pickle jar. Because think about how a closed pickle jar that has never been opened can stay in your fridge for years. But an open pickle jar that you use regularly will not last for months, even if you close the lid down. He says, learn to can your foods. Again, you're giving bad advice because we do not create empty cans that have a can lid that you can seal your foods. So learning to can your foods is an unrealistic recommendation to the average person. Now, putting it into a jar, because we have jars accessible to us, and then sealing it up with a lid, now that's something that we can do because we have mason jars that we can portion our food out. They give us plastic Tupperware that we can portion certain foods out. That doesn't help with foods that require to be placed in liquids, but we do have Ziplocs and Tupperware and everything like that. So learning to portion your food out and put them in vacuum sealed containers and bags, that would be a good recommendation. But giving them the bad advice of learning how to find a can, put it into a can to kind of close it up, that's not realistic advice in modern 2026. Bake them over a fire. Well, if you were Boy Scout and you were out there trying to like eat off of the land, then maybe, yeah, you would bake it like Bush's baked beans in a can over a roasted fire. But again, that's not something that you're going to be trying to learn how to do in 2026. It says, I like to buy my canned foods with gold. That's a waste of money. That's a waste of money. He said beef jerky. Yeah, if you can buy it or if you can create it, I mean, you can create beef jerky. But again, if you were in a situation where you had you were hunting regularly and then you would create the meat for the jerky style, or if you were aging the meat and this was something that you had practiced over years, yeah, that would make sense. But to tell somebody this is what you do in 2026 to get back to your roots, go and figure out how to make jerky, go and figure out how to create cans and jar stuff up in cans. That's bad advice. He says, sorry, the electric went out. Exactly. When the electric goes out, those recommendations don't help. He says, balls jars. Okay. The glass jars with the lids on them. That's canning. No, that's not canning. Canning is a can. Canning is a can. Um, portion control, packaging would include cans, jars, Tupperware, stuff like that. That's not canning. Is in fact putting things in cans. It says if your electricity goes out, those packaged in the fridge only last a day, and that's why I tell you guys about not having packets in the fridge, not stocking up on or overstocking on stuff that requires to be refrigerated. I made it clear that you should prioritize dry products and products that do not require refrigeration for extended storage usage. Pre-sealed so that there isn't unnecessary oxygen in there, there isn't external bacteria in there. Pre-sealed is more effectively going to last longer than you learning how to seal it yourself, because it can still rot in the container that it's in if you don't seal it properly. So if it's already being sold pre-sealed, why waste your time trying to figure out how to seal something that might last you 2 or 3 weeks when you can go buy something from the store sealed that'll last you 6 to 9, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. If you want to survive, you'll find a way. Okay, so for the older generation, and it would actually, it's not the oldest generation, because you have the people that are now in their 70s that more, or older, that more often than not produce this behavior pattern that they don't know how to do things, so that they can get the younger generation to do it for them. I don't know how. They refuse to learn, and then they're incapable of functioning because they refuse to learn. Now, those individuals might not care if they survive or not, but they're in a situation where they're deliberately not learning how to evolve in their current situation, and then unhealthily codependent to the next generation to force the other person by psychological and emotional guilt tripping to aid the elderly person with skills that are beyond the elderly person's capabilities, because the elderly person refuses to learn those skills. So the logic of, if you want to survive, you'll find a way. On a generalistic scale, yes, if you don't want to die and you're in a situation where you're gonna die, you will find a way. And your way might be to go steal it from somebody else because you didn't prepare ahead of time, which is different, right? But in a day-to-day scenario, you're not going to try to learn a nearly impossible skill set simply so that in case of an emergency, you'll survive. You're not going to learn how to put stuff in a metal can to survive. You're going to learn how to go to the store and buy already pre-canned stuff so that it won't be as difficult to survive, right? A little bit different. It says, better go read the definition of canning. Well, I think that you're kind of skewing the situation here, because you took it way to the wrong direction and completely compromised the value of the lesson today. So I think that it would be I don't know. Because I can look up canning for you to kind of help you understand, but it doesn't bring it deviates from the value. So it's almost like you're trying to win a straw man topic versus paying attention to the actual lesson plan for the day, right? Which is very distracting from those who came to learn it. And you're like airtight. Michael. Michael. So, for the sake of helping Michael understand, canning is a heat-based method of preserving food in airtight containers, cans, so that you can store safely for months or years without refrigeration, which is not going to be practical for you in modern times, which is what I was trying to tell you. but Michael's hard-headed. It works where you're heating foods in sealed cans to temperatures high enough to destroy the microorganisms, bacteria, yeast, molds that can cause spoilage or illness, um, inactivating enzymes that would otherwise degrade the flavor, color, and texture over time, and then uh, drive, driving air out of the container so that as it cools, vacuum seal forms that preserves new microorganisms and oxygen from getting back in. Once properly canned and sealed, foods can have a shelf life ranging from many months to several years, depending on the product storage and conditions. Um, there's two primary process methods, choosing based on the acidity of the foods. You have water bathing canning for high acidic foods, and then you have, so this is for fruits, jams, jellies, pickles, any, and mini tomato products. I'm reading this for you, Michael, which isn't what we were working on. Uh, uh, let's see. I'm looking up something. Just to kind of drive back home the point, then we'll get back to the thing. So it's possible for you to learn how to can your items if you have the right resources, and you're trying to save on costs over the long term, controlling your ingredients, um, and developing some type of self-sufficiency. But buying pre-canned foods is better so that you can prioritize your time, the convenience, and the ultra long shelf life of the pre-packaged, the pre-canned foods. So there is a trade-off between what Michael's telling you, which is trying to learn how to grab you some cans, or even if you're trying to pull this off with some mason jars and learning how to can things at your house. It could be less expensive than the equivalent store-bought canned foods, especially if you are capable of growing your own produce or buying in season or in bulk. And once you've bought the supplies to can this stuff up, and you reuse these items year over year, it'll help you with fixed costs and amortization over long volumes of time. However, the extreme labor that you're going to put into this is non-trivial. So you're investing so much more time to source, prep, process, and store food. And there's a very large learning curve to doing this safely so that you're not destroying your food and wasting your time. The store-bought canned food is immediately available. It requires no equipment or skills, and it is often extremely cheap due to industrial scale, which is attractive if you're building a pantry quickly, which is what I was talking about. So really quickly, and then I'm going to get to all the comments that Michael's been throwing in there. I'm not going to ignore Michael. I'm going to get to these comments real quick. As an example, a homestead reported total cost as low as under 25 cents per jar when canning homegrown produce, which is not calculating the cost of growing the produce in and of itself, just the process of canning what has already been picked. And often under $2 a jar, even when buying the produce from a store, typically under comparable retail prices for quality canned foods. So while you can get you a can of Progresso shoot for like $2.50, you could try to spend several hours learning how to can your own stuff at the house. So what's the lesson? The lesson is, Michael, that the younger generation is missing out on a skill set that the older generation still has that is still relevant and usable in today's environment. That's the lesson. Um, Throwing out left field hypotheticals and completely unfeasible for the average person setups is not that direct comparison, because I'm talking about like stuff that used to be done that still could be done under the current circumstances that does not require extreme quantities of effort. Because remember our first example with the difference between using a GPS versus using a roadmap. The curve between the two is pay attention to your surroundings, not spend hundreds of dollars on equipment. The other one that we talked about, the difference between just spend a bunch of money to replace stuff versus take things apart and learn how to fix them, and then save some of the items that can be reused for repair later, which doesn't require a huge financial learning curve. You just take what's broken, disassemble it, keep what's good off of it, throw the rest of it away. Then when we start talking about the difference between prioritizing appropriate foods for long-term storage, when I said the difference between buying canned goods at the store that would last you forever versus buying foods that will spoil within hours of not having refrigeration, you came up with canning foods, which is completely left field, because if you have no power, you're not preserving shit. You would have to do that while you have power. You would have to do that before the emergency. And the effort that it takes to do that, and then the learning curve that it takes to do that, and then the money that it would take to do that, because you would have to buy the supplies that it would require to package the foods, buy the equipment to can the foods. And remember, we said you have to heat this stuff up to a magnitude where it gets rid of all the bacterium and expels all the oxygen from the container to vacuum seal the container. And that skill set, if you're using glass jars, you could break more of them than you actually save. You're going to lose food each time you break a jar. The learning curve, the cost of what you're recommending is a whole lot more complex and unnecessary for the average Gen Z or millennial to have to try to pull off than just buying the already pre-packaged stuff. Because at $2.50 a can, how much are you buying jars for these days? Mason jars like $1.52, $3 a jar, depending on the size of the jar. You can go and buy something that's already got food in it instead of buying the jar to put the food in it. Now, yes, over the course of years, if you're reusing the same jars, the cost is going to be different, like we said. But the difference is that if you don't have a house full of jars already, to go from TV dinners to mason jars, that's a massive curve that is not going to benefit you in the short term. He said, I'll go sit at the kids' table. Well, no, you just got to be more realistic to the topic. They say, okay, so tell us how you're going to survive a major crisis that affects everyone. I was telling you before how to survive a major crisis that affects everyone. If first and foremost, if you're getting a surplus of non-perishable items that will exist in your, because first of all, it depends on the size of your house. It depends on how much storage you have. But if you're buying things that doesn't require refrigeration, that is already pre-packaged and already pre-vacuum sealed and already pre-canned, and then you just store the stuff in bulk, you can have all the shelves in your kitchen covered with canned goods and packaged noodles and ramen noodles and whatever the case may be, and that would last you a hell of a lot longer than filling your fridge full of steaks. That's the first thing. You can do bottled waters. You can stack bottled waters to the ceiling just to prevent from that, because even though, yes, we used to drink from the faucet, when the water treatment plants that is cycling through reclaimed water doesn't work anymore, you start getting raw sewage coming through your faucet. So you're not going to want to drink faucet water when the power is out. You're probably going to want to drink some bottled water so that you don't have to experience that, right? So instead of buying cases of beer and a bunch of Patron, you go and buy you a bunch of cases of bottled water. And instead of buying the individual bottled waters, you might want to buy the gallon jugs of water because they're probably going to be a lot cheaper. It might be $3 for a case of individually packaged bottled waters, for the little plastic bottled waters, but it might just be like 75 cents to $1 for a gallon jug of water, stuff to that effect. Or you can buy the 2-gallon jugs of water that might be $3 for 2 gallons of water instead of spending $3 for like half a gallon of water that's spread across 28 bottles, right? You see, I could be wrong. Wouldn't be able to use the freeway. Well, that's what I was trying to tell you. Buy 3 cases of MREs per person. Right, but if you're buying 3 cases of MREs per person, when you said that the MREs is like $150, $200 a case, that's still a lot of shit to buy for the average individual that's living on a budget. It is possible for you to buy MREs, and I would encourage for people to try to find places that MREs are sold and start collecting them at least 1 case every 3 months so that they can have it in case of an emergency. But I do believe that it is actually more effective for you to stock up on the stuff that you have more accessibility to, because MREs are sold limitedly in certain situations where first you got to get there, and then you got to have the money to buy it. And you said a good investment, just like investing money. No, it's not a good investment if you're trying to invest it. If you're trying to invest in an impractical process that you, 1, don't know anything about, and 2, would have to expel and it's a hobby that you can get that would help you with your ability to find something to do while you're old. But for 20 and 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds that are spending 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, working a full-time job, it is a terrible investment to try to buy up a bunch of mason jars and learn how to pre-package or vacuum seal your foods. With this process of heating up the container and putting the food in a container, heating up the container, and then sealing the container to have the food in the container be vacuum sealed and not spoiled. That's a terrible way to invest your money as well as your time. That's a terrible way to do it. He says, can't the average person still learn it today? No. And the reason why is because no one's there to teach it to them. So since we don't have, so let's say, Michael, if you started up a YouTube channel that started teaching people how to package up their foods, and we would need to have a YouTube channel because it's not written in a book that people have access to. And people don't do recipes as much as they used to because everybody's buying everything online and everybody's buying everything delivered and everything's pre-made, which is one of the reasons why the price of a pre-packaged canned good is almost the same price as a startup cost to package things, and it has less effort. The reason, like 3-4 hours to cook a meal, but like 6 minutes in a microwave, the time saved is the value in your investment, right? So can people learn how to spend half a day packaging up foods? Probably so. Do they have the availability to do that? Probably not. So would that be a practical skill that somebody could learn without fully compromising their life? Absolutely not. But learning how to direct yourself from point A to point B without utilizing a GPS does not deviate you from your day-to-day operation. You might have to leave 15-20 minutes early in order to get there on time if you're not used to paying attention to your surroundings, but it is not a financial catastrophic change, and it is not a massive learning curve that takes half of your day. That's what I'm getting at, is that I agree by canned foods. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like canned foods is a better way to go. Is that, but how many people today will actually prepare food for a disaster? That's the whole reason why canning food is so impractical. How many people are going to take their day off to try to vacuum seal foods when the average person is less likely to just go buy the prepackaged shit at the store? The Americans are lazy. So when we start talking about the easiest way to go is to change the way you spend your money and just buy prepackaged food and put it in your house, which is less effort than going through the trouble of buying the food and then portioning out the food and then packaging the food and then vacuum sealing the food with heat and then storing it. That's why I told you what you brought up was an impractical recommendation. He says canned goods will only last a short amount of time. Uh, get bullets and snares. Well, no, I'm not going to say get bullets. So you should have bullets just because you're an American. You should have bullets for your Second Amendment right. Um, I wouldn't say get bullets and snares, and the reason why I would not say get bullets and snares is because the average person that lives in our city does not have access to the wilderness where bullets and snares would be necessary. In the inner city, in highly populated areas, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 7 million people in a congested area, the likelihood of you snaring something would be a snaring one of your neighbors and then putting a bullet in them. And that's not what we're trying to do. The canned goods might only last you a short amount of time, like 2 to 5 years, right? But the fact is that the average natural disaster that occurs in normal civilization, where civilization hasn't crumbled, just inconvenience for a few weeks to a few months, your food only really needs to last you for 6 months to a year. Look at what happened with COVID. Started in October 2018, kind of wrapped itself up in 2022, but we were only shut down for about 12 months. Anybody who would have had enough canned goods in the refrigerator from November of 2018 to last them until January of 2020 would have been good for the portion of time where we were not allowed to go outside. So you don't need canned goods to last you for eternity. We're not saying hypothetically we're trying to build a lifestyle after a nuclear apocalypse. We're talking about the inconvenience of a natural disaster that's a short-lived natural disaster. Maybe 2, 3 months, 6 months, because like Hurricane Katrina, like I said, it was like a 4-month natural disaster. So you needed like 5 or 6 months worth of food. 5 or 6 months worth of food doesn't require you to learn how to pre-vacuum seal canned goods. He said, then they'll perish if a major crisis happens. Most people would starve to death and die, or kill their neighbors and take their neighbors' food if they don't have enough resources. He says, I'm sure I can find a book. Yeah, but you're 71 years old. Most people are not even looking for a book. The average American right now is trying to Google this information online. And while there is some information online that explains what it is, but right now, just asking about it did not get a step-by-step direction on what to do about it. But just because you mentioned it, I might just actually put that into the membership as how to can foods because Michael said so. Microwave is out for no electricity. I know, but the average person's got TV dinners out of this world. You've got steaks, you've got seafood, you've got all kinds of meats that if you have no power, and you got to think about, there's a lot of housing, especially in Florida and California, that has no gas. So if the electricity goes out, you don't have a way to cook your food. You don't have a stove, you don't have a microwave, you don't have hot water, you don't have a hot water heater. So if you don't have a propane tank and a propane stove or some type of butane gas system in your house, or camping gear that you can use in your house, you don't have a way to heat up your food if the power goes out. If the power goes out for a couple of weeks, if the power goes out for half a month, if the power goes out for 6 weeks, you can't survive without food for more than a month. But you're going to be really sick by the end of that month because the average person really can't go 3 days without food with the way that we function. You can't go more than 3 days without water either. Technically, we can go several months, several weeks down the line if all we had was water, but we would really starve ourselves damn near to death. So when you think about with no electricity, you can open a can of Progresso soup, you can open a can of SpaghettiOs, you can open a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup and eat straight out of the can, food and fluid. And 1 can a day, if you had 2,000 cans in your house, you could last for 2,000 days. It said people can every day, even people working. Okay. Statistically speaking, Michael, that's not true. The average person does not have the 3 to 6 hours that it takes to prepare food to cook at home on a regular basis, which is why people eat out and have TV dinners and microwavable foods. So if they don't have enough time to cook a real meal at the house, they're not going to have the time to pre-package and vacuum seal foods to store it in their house. He said, okay, so how are you going to survive in a major city? So, Michael, unless you're planning on eating the neighbor's dogs and cats, there's no animals in the major city that you can legally access to stock up on food, meats per se. If you live out in the country, then you have the ability to hunt off of your own land if you have a big enough piece of property. You're going to be in an unincorporated area, so you're legally allowed to shoot there. But if you're in an incorporated area, the police are going to come and arrest you if you're shooting on your land. If you're within 150 feet of another house, you're in trouble. So, you know, if you've got like 14 acres of land and you go like 5 acres in and start stumping on your own land, probably not going to have as much stuff going on as you would if you can see your neighbor's house from where you're sitting at right now. Okay. Now, when you start talking about snares, it is against the law to set up traps on your property. You're not supposed to set up traps anywhere other than hunting grounds, and hunting grounds have certain limits to what you can hunt. Again, usually in natural disasters, the animals are the smartest ones to get the fuck out of Dodge before the natural disaster. Usually after the natural disaster has subsided, does the animal start to return if it is safe. So if the natural disaster has come, there is nothing to hunt. So you would effectively have to buy prepackaged foods and bring them home. That is how you survive, Michael. Everybody will try to get out of the city. No, everybody will not try to get out of the city. The average middle to upper class individual will evacuate a natural disaster, and the bottom 50% of Americans stay and weather it out. The bottom 25% always stays and weathers it out because they don't have enough money to pay for a hotel. A lot of them don't have their own vehicles. They can't afford to pay for 2 places at one time. They will stay and weather out the storm because it's just financially cheaper for them. Everybody will not try to get out of Dodge. Most people will duct tape their houses and board up the windows and doors and pray that they don't get destroyed by the natural disaster. He said once the shelves go empty, it's off. He said once the shelves go empty, it's off to your house. Well, yeah, and again, you come over to my house, you're gonna catch a bullet. You'll have to invest fire. Oh, no, you said I'll have to invent fire? No, we don't have to invent fire. That's we got lighters and matches and burnable items for. They had time to go out to dinner. Well, again, Americans are lazy, Michael, so you're forgetting the dynamic that the fact that I can go out to dinner and I can spend 2 hours having somebody else wait on me hand and foot, cook my food, bring it to me, I'm going to eat, then they're going to wash the dishes, put them away and feed it to somebody else. That convenience that Americans have adopted is different from picking the crops in your yard, which requires you to grow the crops, which requires you to buy the seeds, which requires you to harvest the lands, and then double back. And after you've picked the crops, then you have to process the crops and then put them in this container. Then you have to heat up the container, destroy all the bacteria in the container, seal the container, and then let it cool, and then store that container after it cooled somewhere else. That quantity of work, Michael, is not inside of the available time of the average individual. So you gotta remember that. Is I'll eat your dog and mine. Probably so, but you'll be dinner for my dog before my dog is dinner for you. He says if you'll break out, there won't be any legals. Well, I don't understand that. I think, okay, so the deer and elk and bear and all the stuff that you're claiming would actually be huntable. It's not huntable in a natural disaster because they're not hanging out in your backyard during a thunderstorm, during a hurricane, during earthquakes and stuff like that. Animals take off running, forest fires, animals take off running. The body count that they did when California was on fire for 45 days did not include deer, bear, and elk. It was just people who didn't know how to get the fuck out of Dodge. Again, because people don't leave in a natural disaster. He says, if hell breaks out, or there won't be no laws. No, actually, it's what we call martial law. Martial law is when natural disasters occur so that the government prevents people like you from doing the things that you recommend. They will put the military on the street to stop you from doing things that you normally do. He said, Hurricane Katrina, most people evacuated. No, they didn't. What kind of lie are you? Who told you that shit? Hurricane Katrina, more than half of the people stayed. Matter of fact, Hurricane Katrina, you had people on the highway who couldn't evacuate because Texas was blocked off, Mississippi got hit, Alabama got hit, the top part of town, was it? No, Jacksonville, like the top half of Florida got hit. What are you talking about? Most of the people evacuated. No, the fuck they didn't, bro. You lost. You are definitely misled with, I don't know where you're getting your facts from. He said, why buy seeds? Every plant creates new seeds. So stop buying seeds. Okay, so here we go again. The problem that we have, Michael, the difference between already prepackaged foods, if we're not going to buy the seeds, how are we going to get to your canning recommendation? You would have to go to the grocery store, buy the groceries, since you're not growing it in your own yard, buy the groceries, and then process them, portion them out, put them into a can, and then back them up. Now, if you're buying it from the store where the prepackaged stuff is, and you're going to buy it not packaged so that you can bring it back to the house and put forth the effort of doing the canning process, you are literally wasting your time and your money, because the item was also sold next to a prepackaged of the exact same thing sometimes, because you're not going to see lettuce in a jar, but instead of seeing tomatoes on a shelf, you see tomatoes in a can. Instead of seeing frozen peas in a frozen food aisle, you see peas in a can. And instead of you going to get the freaking peas in the can, you're going to go get a bag of peas from the frozen food section that costs more than a canned peas, so that you can go through the process of buying a jar and then canning it up. That's a waste of time, effort, and money, Michael. That's a waste of time, effort, and money. He said, won't be any laws. No, there'll be laws. You'll just be trying to break them. He says, I was there in Hurricane Katrina. I was there. I lived there, delivering loads of food. And if you're delivering loads of food to Louisiana during Katrina, that's because a load of people didn't leave. Thank you for proving my point. If you couldn't, if you could go, people got out. No, that's not true. People were trying to evacuate to Texas. Texas closed its borders and wasn't letting people out. The majority of people that didn't go didn't have the means to go, and that's the reason why they stayed. And the majority of people didn't leave, and that's the reason why you were bringing loads of food to the state, because there were loads of people there. If the majority of people left, like you claimed, you would have been bringing loads of shit nowhere. It would have been a barren wasteland. So derail my topic for 40 minutes. A person with resource discipline, and that's what we were talking about before he took us down the wrong path, has the ability to see the lack of resources as a challenge, not a catastrophe. Okay. And he said, "Oh, go to the local farmer's market for fresh food." You're going to go to the local farmer. You're not going to find a bag of non-frozen peas at the farmer's market cheaper than a can of peas at Walmart. So, and then the jar that you're going to buy, that's like $1.75 to take the $2.50 worth of peas and put it into that jar, plus the propane tank you're going to buy so that you can put it to your gas stove, because most houses don't have gas in America. There are some cities and states that still have gas stoves, but not very many of them. They modernize everything and do electric only. So if you have a gas house, make sure you take good care of it. But if you're spending $3 for the food in the container that you're putting it in, when you could have bought it for $1.50, $2, you're already wasting money, and now you're going to put the effort into packaging this item up. Now, this is one of the reasons why I tell you that your method is impractical, Michael, because you're only going to reuse the jar or can if you experience a natural disaster. So if you're going to pre-package food where you buy, 5 or 10 extra cans of stuff that you're not going to use right now because you're not at a natural disaster, and put it on your shelf, which takes no time, little effort to do, versus buying an inventory of items that would then require you to put in extra effort every week to package this stuff up. You're spending more money than you're saving, and you're putting more time into the process of storing the foods, which is impractical in comparison to your ability to buy the already processed stuff and put it up on the shelf. Now, if you lived on a farm, if you had 100 acres of land, if you hunted every day, if you grew your own stuff and you processed your own stuff, and this been your habit since childhood, where you actually never go to the actual grocery store, and this was part of your daily routine, like the Mormons, then yes, canning would be a good idea. But for 90-something% of Americans, that is impractical recommendations. Now, having what preparedness experts call is a quiet pantry is what I was trying to get to. It's a rotating stock of shelfable items. This is stable essentials. You're going to know how to take basic ingredients like flour, water, salt, oil, and create real meals with them. You'll be able to stretch resources to keep the family fed, which preserves not just physical strength, but also psychological calm. Cooking from scratch is also an economic survival skill. It can dramatically cut down daily expenses. Now, this skill has some deeply pragmatic layers. One can be called Depression era barter logic. And this isn't about hoarding toilet paper. It's the quiet stocking of modest vice goods, things like coffee, sugar, alcohol, or tobacco. The historical lesson is that in a true crisis, when cash might become useless, these are going to be the items that can become a currency for barter, for building goodwill with neighbors, or for boosting morale. You can trade a couple cups of sugar or enough sugar and coffee to make a cup of coffee or sugar to a neighbor after a natural disaster in exchange for something that they have that you want. You can exchange alcohol to, so right now, even in a fully functional society, you can find what is called an under the oak tree mechanic, and with enough alcohol and enough weed, he'll rebuild your engine and rebuild your transmission. Barter system. Tobacco, smokers, when cigarettes run out, and in some situations when weed runs out, smokers need to smoke. And under that dynamic, if you were to have a stockpile of some kind of tobacco product, then when times get tough, you can trade a pack of cigarettes for a service. You can trade a carton of cigarettes for a tow. You can do things with tobacco because they don't have access to tobacco anymore. The tobacco's all gone. So if you've got it, it's a currency, right? Another thing is a practice psychological readiness for downward mobility. Having grown up through economic recessions, many Gen Xers develop a mental willingness to live on less if they needed to, meaning that they're not going to overspend just to maintain their personal desires level of expectation because it wasn't practical. This isn't pessimism, it's adaptability. When a crisis forces a lifestyle change, they're less likely to panic because they've already mentally rehearsed a life with less benefits. So, recognizing this information, here's going to be your challenge. You want to design a 7-day meal plan using only shelf stable ingredients. And shelf stable ingredients is stuff that's not stored in your refrigerator. That is not required to maintain a chilled or cold temperature. Dry products must add water to cook up and eat. So this is going to be ingredients like rice, beans, pasta, canned goods, Michael, pre-canned goods from the grocery store, oats, oil, salt, and spices. This isn't whole foods from a garden outside. This is shelfable, stable ingredients. Now, this exercise will quickly show you any gaps in your skills and your equipment. Because first of all, your ability to see shelfable items at the grocery store, buy them and bring them home, instead of non-shelfable items where you have to put forth the effort to learn how to store it properly to stretch the lifespan of it. You will then learn how to piece together meals and create like 2 or 3 different cans can come together and make a full meal in some situations. For take for example, the Progresso soup with the slow stewed beef. You can take that, put it on a bed of rice. The can is like $2.50, $2.75 for the can, and you get you a bag of rice for well, you get a big bag of rice, like a 20-pound bag, not a 20-pound, yeah, 20-pound bag of rice, a 20-pound bag of rice for like $10. So really, 2 scoops of rice and 1 can of slow stewed beef, and you are ultimately spending like $3.50 on a meal. Not the same, because yes, you can microwave that if you have power, but if you don't have electricity, if you're trying to set up a dynamic to see if you can to manage this on a fly, you get you those propane tanks from the garden not the garden section, the sporting goods section at Walmart. You get the propane tanks. You can either get the big propane tanks for the 5-gallon propane tanks or a small 1-gallon propane tanks, and then the 2-eye burner and a pot. You can boil your water on the gas stove or the 2-eye burner, and then heat up your can with your Progresso stuff in it, and then pour that into a bowl. Probably going to be a ceramic bowl, just to maintain the heat. Put your rice in the bowl. Put your can of Progresso soup in the bowl. Let it cool off a little bit. Fork it up. Eat it. That is something that you have to learn how to do, right? And then actually cook this food, right? And this exercise is going to show you what's going on. Second, start building a quiet pantry. Building a quiet pantry is a lot easier if you're not trying to do a Michael setting and create the can and then put the stuff in the can and then seal the can up. You want to begin with a simple 72-hour kit of food and water for each person in your house. So if you assume that there's like 2 or 3 people in your house, let's say it might be you, 1 or 2 other people, and probably your dog. You might want to have an extra quantity of portion for your pet too. But imagine, probably 1 or 2 cans per person, 3 times a day, probably 6 cans for each person. If there's 2 people in the house, that's 12 cans for 1 day. If you want to add 2 more cans for the dog, 14, maybe 15 cans total for the 3 of you per day. Now, if that's 15 cans, so you're trying to get 75 or 72 hours worth of stuff, which is 3 days, you got 15 times 3, which is 75 cans. Now, just for a 3-day supply, you can literally go to the store and buy 75 to 90 cans of food and bring it back to the house and put it into your fridge. And that, Michael, would be less difficult than starting up your own processing plant in your house to package up 90 cans of food. But once you get there, and this is stuff that you're putting into the pantry and you're not using, you want to gradually expand upon that. Rotate your stock every 6 months so that nothing goes to waste. You want to start putting the stuff on the shelf, and then and if you're getting, 75 cans every month, and you're stocking them up, and you don't necessarily need all 75 of them, eventually you're going to reach a point where you run out of space in your pantry. You might have like 2,000 cans in your pantry, and you run out of cans in your pantry. At that point, you want to take the oldest cans out first and put the newest cans in the back. Rotate out your inventory, which means that if you only have like 2,000 cans and you're using 15 cans a day, 1,500 cans would be 100 days. 100 days is almost 6 months. So with another 500 cans left, you're guaranteed to cross over 6 months. Think about that for a minute. And that's just the cans. That's not the rice and all the other stuff I talked to you guys about. This isn't hoarding. It's a rational insurance policy against uncertainty. The fourth skill is going to be about money, but its roots are psychological. It's the skill of analog money management and the almost forgotten art of delayed gratification. Now, this is really important for you guys tonight. Delayed gratification. Gen Xers come from an age when money was more of a physical thing. Before banking apps, you managed your finances by balancing a checkbook, a physical ledger where you wrote down every deposit and every withdrawal. Spending wasn't an abstract tap of a card or a swipe of your phone across the register. It was a physical act of writing a check or handing over cash, which researchers show makes a transaction feel more real. The layaway, where you paid for an item in installments before taking it home, was very common, especially at Walmart. It was a delayed gratification as a business model. Layaway was most effective because you would collect the item when it was available in stores and made payments on the item until you paid for it in full, so that, and a lot of parents would do that throughout the year, grab a bunch of items, put it on layaway at Walmart, and make payments on it throughout the year, and then pick it up right before Christmas and bring it home. And that way they would have all of the stuff that Walmart had available for their kids throughout the year, and then bring all that stuff home and give it to their kids for Christmas. Today's financial world is mostly abstract and frictionless, very, very like in the moment. Many have never written a check, don't know what a check looks like. Seen it on TV where they get this big oversized check when somebody wins something, but they haven't actually seen a check in practice in a transaction of sale. Right? Money is just a number in an app. Tap to pay, buy now, pay later. These services are designed to remove any hesitation from spending. And this digital abstract makes it incredibly easy to lose track of cash flow. And it's paired with a social media culture that often glorifies instant gratification. So let's consider a plausible crisis, a systematic banking outage, or a major cyber attack. Suddenly, apps don't work. ATM machines are dark. Credit card and debit cards are useless. In these scenarios, those totally reliant on digital systems are financially paralyzed. And this is one of the reasons why I try to condition you guys to try to keep a safe full of cash at your house. It doesn't have to be a bunch of money, a couple $1,000, maybe at up to $5,000 at your house, depending on how long you're planning on going through some bullshit. Typically, it's supposed to be there to help you refuel your vehicle and buy food, not necessarily to pay lights, gas, and water bill, but to make sure that you don't starve to death and you have the ability to have transportation to get to and from where you're trying to go, right? And this is one of the reasons why. But someone with an analog mindset is going to have a fallback plan. They likely keep reserves of physical cash at the house, which is what I'm trying to tell you guys. More importantly, the mental habit of tracking money manually can build a stronger awareness of their financial health, because you know how long you can survive off of the money that you have if you know exactly how much money that you have. And when we think about how much you have, it's not how much that is on the screen on your cell phone. It is how much can you touch right now while we're talking about this on this topic today. Right? While Gen X actually carries the highest average debt of any generation, often due to being in an expensive phase of life with mortgages, kids, the skills of manual budgeting are about awareness and control, not a guarantee of wealth. So, for the unorthodox layers of this, you have to first shift from thinking about net worth to actual cash flow thinking. In a crisis, liquidity is king. Net worth is an abstract number that based off of how much your stuff is valued at versus how much you owe people. Your net worth is how much money would you have left over if you sold all of your shit and paid off all of your debt. That's your net worth. It is not actual liquid assets. Billionaires with a net worth of billions means that the amount of stuff that they have legal control over or legal access to is worth billions of dollars more than the debt that stuff carries. That's where the net worth comes from. Cash flow is the concrete reality of what's coming in and what's going out. So a billionaire can be a billionaire until the internet goes out, and then a billionaire is broke. A billionaire with gold, silver, platinum, and cash in a safe in their house is still rich when the power goes out. A mindset focused on managing the timing and reliability of cash keeps you liquid, which is crucial for survival. Now, the second trick is a practice skeptical posture. Gen X was marinated in scandals, from corporate greed to political lies. This tended to breed a healthy skeptical observation of marketing claims and too good to be true offers. In an age of sophisticated online scams, this instinct to question and verify is a very powerful defense. So here's how you challenge yourself in this area. For one whole month, you want to track every single one of your expenses manually in a physical notebook. Feel the friction, see the pattern. Second, for any non-essential purchase over, let's say 50 bucks, enforce a mandatory 48-hour cool-off period where you delay making the transaction. If you still want it after a couple days, fine, go ahead and get it. But you're training your brain to separate impulse buying from real need. If you wait 2 days and during that 2 days, you evaluate the value of the product, meaning how am I going to use this in my day-to-day operations versus the novelty of having the product, meaning I'm just going to feel good about having it, or I'm going to be able to show this off to certain people. After a while, you're going to find yourself realizing that the quantity of money that I would have spent on that item would not have had as much practical usage in my life. It would have looked good in the moment. It would have looked good for a couple of weeks. It might have even lasted a couple of months, depending on what it was and how much I really wanted to have it. But the fact is that eventually it would become an item that would collect dust in the closet and not have any monetary value. So you will be able to train your brain to separate impulse from real need. Now, these analog practices aren't about rejecting convenience. They're about reclaiming conscious control over your financial life. Our final skill that we're going to talk about tonight is the most philosophical, but it might be the most important one. It's going to be the mix of social and psychological abilities. We're going to refer to analog communications and real world social skills, and the strength to simply unplug. A Gen Z social life was intensely local and physical. Everybody met in person. Making plans meant picking up a landline, having a real-time conversation, and agreeing on a time and a place. We used to go to our friend's house and knock on their door and see if they were home. And we didn't just knock once and leave. We would knock 2 or 3 times and linger for 5 minutes before we left, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes before we left. If someone was late, you just waited for them. There was no text. There was no social media update. There was no pinging your location. This environment demanded a different set of skills. Reading body language, making eye contact, paying attention to if they're closing a blind, shutting off all the lights when you show up, versus the time it takes for them to come from you seeing a light come on to them actually opening the door to see what you needed, right? You're actually able to navigate awkward silences and uncomfortable body language. Boredom was always just a part of life, not knowing what to do with yourselves in a collective. This is where the Latchkey kids had adventures, because we would literally get bored and decide to go wander into the woods and find ourselves stumbling across an abandoned building or an abandoned vehicle or a pond or a lake or a cave or a train track or whatever the case, and follow it and see where it goes, because we had nothing else to do, right? With limited TV and no smartphones, you were often left either alone with your own thoughts, which is an incubator for creativity and internal resources, or getting into mischief to entertain yourself. The Gen Z world is hyper-connected. Digital platforms allow for carefully crafted responses and avoiding direct, uncomfortable conflict. But that also means less practice with messy, unedited, in-person communication. The always-on nature of modern tech has nearly wiped out boredom, because we doom scroll until we fall asleep. Netflix for 40 hours a week. We find ways to keep ourselves distracted from ourselves. But in its place, it is often a constant state of distraction that can make deep focus a challenge. We don't even remember how to focus on one thing for an extended period of time. So let's apply our crisis lens. In a massive multi-day network outage, the internet is down, cell phones are dead, the ability to organize now depends entirely on an analog method. Groups that have a pre-established physical rally point can reconnect. Like if we all go and hang out at the local pub as adults, that would be a thing to do. But as kids, we would sometimes all meet at one of our friends' houses, or we might all meet up at a local park. Power goes out, what do? Go to that one specific location to reconnect, make sure everybody's okay, go look for the ones that aren't there. People who are comfortable approaching neighbors face to face to share information or ask for help have huge advantages when the power goes out. When shit starts going down, you start going to other people. Hey, are you experiencing what I'm experiencing? You know, do you need something? Stuff to that effect. And psychologically, those who can handle the sudden silence without panicking are better able to think clearly and lead. Because if you can sit in a room by yourself with no TV, no phone, no nothing, you are more capable of rationalizing how to get out of this situation than somebody that always needs something playing in the background. The unorthodox layers here are going to be powerful. The first is the concept of the whisper network. Because before social media, information about who was reliable, who was in trouble, and who could be trusted traveled through informal face-to-face channels. In a digital blackout, these analog social networks become the most reliable information grids. Another is what some psychologists call emotional pilance, or yeah, pliancy, emotional pliancy. That's the way to pronounce that. Emotional pliancy. I had to look at that word for a second. This is the ability to flex between different emotional states: humor, seriousness, detachment, empathy, without snapping under long-term stress. It's the gallows humor that keeps a group with their morale higher than those who are in distress and despair. It's the calm detachment needed to perform first aid. For some Gen Xers, this was a coping mechanism learned during turbulent times. So here's your final challenge for tonight. First, you want to establish an analog rally plan with a lot of your family and some of your close friends. Pick a primary meeting spot near home, a secondary one further away, just in case the primary one is not accessible. Decide on a simple, non-digital signal: a chalk mark on a curb, a ribbon on a doorknob to mean that I was here and I'm okay, or I've moved to the backup location. Second, schedule a weekly analog window. For 3 hours, all screens go off. Read a book, go for a walk, talk to someone, take your dog out for Christ's sake. Let the boredom come and see what your brain does with it. You're rebuilding your capacity for internal focus. And this is going to be very key, because when we watch those post-apocalyptic movies where the main character, the protagonist, goes on a journey to find their family, their friends, or their loved one. Usually some dude is going after his girlfriend or some shit like that. We've never had a post-apocalyptic movie that I can remember where a woman was going to find her husband or her boyfriend. It is usually the man going to find and make sure that his family is okay. Yeah, mother will go after her kids, but that's it. No woman ever goes looking for her husband. I want to make sure my husband's okay. That's not the journey that they're on, But the fact of the matter is that in their travels, they will leave messages. So and so was here. They will carve with a knife or rock or something like that their information into any type of safe haven scenario, so that if their family or friends were to pass that location, they would know that they were there. You're on the right track. If you had a way to tie something on the door or something like that, something of non-value that nobody would take, but they would see it and ignore it. If other people in your network knows what that is, they're like, oh, my friend or my family was here because they tied a shoestring on the door. Shoestring's still there, After all this talk of old school skills, let's circle back to the main point. This is not about declaring one generation superior than the others. That would miss the single most important idea here. Reliance in the 21st century is about building a hybrid skill set. You want to be skilled and capable of functioning in the technological realm, but you also want to be able to function when the technological realm is no longer in your favor. I tell people all the time that technology is your friend until it's not. And what that means is that you will benefit from it until it stops working for your benefit. Your computer is the quickest way to get shit done until your computer stops picking up a signal, until your computer stops processing information, and now you're stuck in a situation where you either get your computer working, do without the information, or handwrite the shit, right? Too much codependency on technology prevents you from finding an alternative. Now, Gen Zs brings game-changing abilities to the table, because while research is mixed, and being a digital native does not automatically grant immunity, Many younger people have developed a sharper ability to navigate online spaces, which is very crucial for identifying certain kinds of misinformation in an era of information warfare, which is why we had to fact check the information that we got from Michael. Their willingness to discuss mental health is helping to destigmatize the psychological tolls of a crisis, a huge departure from the more stoic norms many Gen Xers grew up with. Gen Z's incredible tech adaptability means that they can learn and use new tools to solve problems in astonishing speeds. And their ability to build vast supportive online communities can mobilize help on a global scale if they're capable of connecting online. So the ultimate survivor, the truly resilient community, is going to be a blend. The person who can navigate to a hospital with a paper map and then use their digital literacy to vet the information online once they're there. It's the family that has a 30-day pantry and also has a member who can organize an online fundraiser for neighbors. It's about stocking Gen X's analog grit with Gen Z's digital fluency. The 5 skills that we discussed today, which is the analog navigation, hands-on repair, resource discipline, and manual money management, along with the ability to unplug, are not relics. They are a critical buffer against the fragility of our modern world. And they represent the points where technology can fail and the human capacity must take over. Yes, communication was gone. I wonder where you was. I was sitting over here like, man, Michael went and took a nap. Because you used to only stay here till midnight. This is like 2 in the morning. Yeah, when communication is gone, you have to know how to facilitate the communication. Learning these skills is about empowerment. It's about declarations that you are not just a consumer of systems, but a capable person who can function with or without them. Learning to read a map, fix a leak, or sit in silence are not steps backwards. They are steps towards a deeper, more robust form of self-reliance. Knowing which direction is north is one of the most important things that you need to remember when you're traveling, especially if you get lost in the woods. They are the skills that gives you the options when other people run out of options. Now, this isn't about rejecting the future. It's about insuring yourself against its potential glitches. He says, I'm a baby boomer. Yeah, I understand that. I completely understand that. 1955, 1954, you're way, way before my time. Gen Xers would have been, like I said, 65 to like 1980, 1990, something like that, right? So when you were probably you were probably in your 20s when, well, no, actually, you were 40 when I were born. So, you were the generation before me, because generations are usually calculated at a 15 to 20 year scenario. So my generation would have been the last of the generation right after your generation. You were the baby boomers, and then we had the I can't think of the name between the baby boomers and us, but then we were the Gen Xers, but I was the last of the Gen Xers. Right? So the bicycle broke down, we fixed it, and we fixed it on the spot. I don't know about you, Michael, but I used to have in my back pocket, I would have a wrench and like a crescent wrench and a pair of pliers. I would also have like a little pouch with a spare inner tube and a screwdriver. if my bike broke down, wherever the fuck I was able to fix my bike because what else we had? We had on the frame of the bike an inner tube, not an inner tube, a bicycle pump. So because I used to have mongoose, I used to have mountain bikes on my shit. I used to always have a mountain bike, but even if it wasn't a mongoose, I always have a mountain bike. And who cares about the water bottle? I had a bicycle pump mounted on my thing, a repair kit mounted on my thing, and I had tools in my pocket. And I would always go places with that stuff. So if that bike broke down, I was fixing it on the spot. And then we get back on and we ride. He said, you weren't even taught in the back seat of a car yet. Yeah, you're right, because when you were 30, I was born. So, you know, you were like, wait, you're like ancient. I'm familiar with your lifestyle because my parents taught me, and they came from your era. They said a bicycle kit tied to the bottom of the seat. That's old school. We actually had the little fanny pack thing so we could strap onto the bike. But, you know, a lot of things change in 40 years. But we still had the equipment to fix the bike on the bike with us. And we was able to take it with us and go places. And if something happened, we had a flat, we fixed it. If the chain came off the bike, we fixed it. The only thing we couldn't really fix was a bent rim, but we would do the best we can with it and find like 2 concrete bricks. And then we would like stand on the rim and try to mash the rim back as straight as possible. And then if we still had a little bit of a warp in it, we would just loosen up the brakes so that the warp wouldn't mess up the brake pads. And then we just ride that bitch back to the house. A lot of us would, and then when we got home, we would strip down another bike and fix that bike. Sometimes we have 1 big wheel and 1 small wheel. Some people had 2 small wheels. Some people had the biggest wheels that could fit on a bike. We would take out the gearbox and put a gearbox on a bike that never had a gearbox on it. We would modify bicycles, and it was a thing, especially in low-income neighborhoods. Bicycles became like a mode of transportation that was a car for adults. We would call those Schwinn's, the beach cruisers, we would call them the Cadillacs of bicycles. It's a single speed bike. If you found a 3-speed, you were doing something. But it was like a 26-inch single speed bike. I'm trying to tell you from back in the day. This is about building a foundation of competence so solid that you can embrace the digital world without being completely dependent on it. Because if they're really putting out these $15,000 females, robotic, fully functional females on the market, there's going to come a time where too much self-learning AI is going to have these robots getting jealous, and then we're going to have these female robots trying to kill off all the women. And look, either the men are going to have to defend or the women are going to have to learn how to, but we can't be overly reliant on technology, because if we become too overly reliant on technology, we're going to lose our sense of self. Yeah, the Schwinn with the banana seat, yellow, the Stingray, the one with the and I preferred the girls' bike over the boys' bike, because they would have the boys' bike with the big hump over it under the seat, where the girls' bike would have the dip in it. And I preferred the girl. And I always asked myself, why do they give the boy the big bar that they can break their balls on, but they give the girl the freaking crevice where nothing happens to them when they fall off the seat? I'm like, no, that's not fair. Give them the bar. Shit. They have less to lose. All they have is a pelvic bone. We have the family jewels. We should have the crevice. Elevate. Oh no. So the handlebar started down. We would take a pair of pliers or a pressure wrench and loosen the thing, and then elevate the handlebars and then tighten it back down. And now they're elevated handlebars. I was using these back in the day, bro. We used to elevate them back in the day. And one of the wild parts was we used to elevate them to get more torque so that we can put more power in our pedal, because we would pull we would get the torque, and then we would kind of like push down on the bike and pull, and like kind of use the extra height to kind of get that extra force on the sprocket system to get that tire to spin faster. It was a whole exercise, and you notice that when we were kids, we were in shape. We had six packs. We were toned. We had athletic thighs and calves. We were in shape. In our 40s and 50s, we start getting guts. We start having back problems. We was, man, because we not exercising the way we used to exercise when we was a kid. Because it wasn't called exercising as a kid. It was called living life and not being grounded. He says, and you were styling when you had a playing card attached to the tire. Well, okay, so 40 years down the line, that stopped being a thing. But yes, when you were a kid, that was the jam sandwich. So in the 60s and 70s, kids used to take the playing cards, the baseball cards, like King Griffey, Mickey Mantle, all of the other stuff, and they would take them and like kind of tape it to the frame of the bike and have it into the spokes, and it would as the wheel would turn, it would and kind of give that motorcycle sound to the bike, the artificial motorcycle sound to the bike. You were riding a style when you had it like that. You were riding a style when you had it like that. When in the 80s, we didn't have the trading card because, and the main reason why we didn't was because by the time I was born, those exact same trading cards had monetary value. So if we had them, we wasn't gonna fuck them up. I put them on a bicycle. But what we would do in our generation, instead of having the imitation motor sound by putting the playing card in the spokes, we had the screeching tire situation. So we would try to go really fast and then slam on brakes. Well, some of us, instead of relying on the actual hand brakes or reversing the foot pedal to have the foot brake, we would actually take our foot and put it on the back tire and try to slide the bike and have tire tracks in the street and slide the bike to make the screeching sound the way when cars like slam on brakes, so that we can get that screeching sound. And if you could make that happen, you were a jam sandwich in the 80s and 90s. So, but that would wear down your tire. Your tire would have uneven spaces on it because the flat surface that would slide on a regular basis would get balled down quicker. So you'd have to change out the tires more often. Which again, if you got a lot of similar style bikes in the neighborhood, all you had to do was just borrow one from a neighbor, take their back tire, put it on your bike, and now you got it. The nostalgia of childhood, right? So, any broken ankles? Not from bicycles. I was lucky. I have had friends that broke some ankles. I had friends that broke some arms. I had friends that punctured their chest with bicycles and stuff. We used to jump rooftops and stuff like that, base jump off of bridges and train tracks and stuff to that effect, climb trees and everything like that. But we never got really fucked up on a bicycle. I got fucked up on a motorcycle, but not on a bicycle. Never even gotten a sprain on bicycles. You know, we used to do stunts and tricks on bicycles, but we wasn't doing the kind of stunts and tricks on bicycle like you see like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, like trying to slide down stairwells and stuff. We wouldn't do shit like that. You know, yeah, we would ramp a bicycle off of a stable scenario and fall and hit the ground with that and warp the bike, and then we have to replace the bike. But for inner city kids, because we didn't have mountains to do that stuff with, but we weren't like ramping off of a stairwell with a 20-foot drop where we could break something and end up in the hospital the way these skateboarders are doing. We didn't do stuff like that. So we didn't have the kind of broke, but we did get hurt. We did get fucked up. We did get sores. We did get cuts and scrapes and scratches and stuff like that. We were not invincible, but we thought we were until we started bleeding. But all we had was peroxide and rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. You pour some stuff on it, cover it with some Neosporin, put a bandage on it, get your ass back outside. That's pretty much all it was. And And that actually brings us back to a dynamic with fashion right now, because back in our day, we had regular jeans that would only become stain wash jeans because somebody fucked up and put bleach in the jeans. So jeans were always blue jeans or black jeans because that's the way they came. And until they got faded from years of wear, or when somebody accidentally put bleach in the color clothes, that's when you get bleach stain. We didn't buy pre-stained clothes from the store. We also had clothes that had holes and rips in them because of the stuff that we were doing at the time that we were playing that ripped our clothes. And we ended up with ripped jeans. And we wore those ripped jeans as play clothes because our parents couldn't afford to buy us clothes every time we fucked it up. So if we fucked up good clothes, you now only wear that when you go to play with your friends. And then the good stuff that we buy, we would only wear that in places of importance. I really appreciate it, man. We're here 7 nights a week. We give you guys all kinds of information about a lot of other things. We talk about business and finance on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we talk about personal improvement. And I'm just trying to tell y'all, hey, young bucks, if y'all learn about reenacting how the old folks are doing stuff, y'all might find yourselves in a more practical position. Yeah, the bell bottoms or the elephant pants. Yeah, we used to, and then when the clothes got ripped up too much, that's where the jean shorts came from, was because the rip got so big, you just cut the pants leg off, and we usually cut it at the knee. And then we had shorts. We didn't have the shorts that were so short that your pockets hang below your shorts. Nobody ever did that. The girls are doing that now to look attractive, which it's very terrible. You look easy, but you don't look attractive. Okay, so you look desirable to the magnitude that somebody would sleep with you, but you don't look desirable to the magnitude of girlfriend and wife material. It's like a mistress. It's like a call girl. It's like a non-valuable woman kind of thing. So when they're cutting the shorts too short to exploit their genitalia, at the end of the day, like you're attracting the wrong attention. Like, we actually only cut the shorts because the pants were that fucked up that we couldn't maintain the pant leg anymore, and then we would cut it. But the kids these days, they just cut it so that they can look cute, that they can look attractive, and it's terrible. It's terrible because they have to turn the sound down, listening to the screech owls outside my window. Oh. When the owls start making noise, it might be somebody coming to the house. It might be in one of them cabins in the woods. You're gonna have to get rack them, lock and load, and get out there and go investigate. So definitely, if you guys have ever experienced or remember your family or your grandparents or anybody telling you one of those stories the way Michael's been doing it, make sure you drop a comment into the comment section with one of the old school skills that you think people should relearn that they've already forgotten or might not even know anything about. What do you miss if you're from the old school? What do you miss about the way we used to do things when we was kids? And if you think that this analog skill is more important than ever, make sure that you subscribe to the content that we have, because we're going to be providing a lot more information about these real world building capacities where your capabilities can improve and enhance. Because if we forget the way things used to be, we won't be prepared when it goes back to the way it was. Because think about it right now, y'all. We went back to war where there is less likely of a resolution before the end of the year, but they might try to draw a resolution by November. But I can't really put my finger on it now. But the fact is that while they're in conflict right now, where Trump is claiming that he's going to finish what he started, almost to the magnitude of wiping out the infrastructure of Iran, the fact is that if they are still in conflict in January for any reason, all of the 18 to 26-year-olds qualify to be drafted, which means they qualify to be pulled in for basic training so that they can be on reserve just in case we don't have enough troops or we need more troops to replenish the troops during active combat. And truth be told, the information I'm talking to you guys about today, like, that would actually come in handy if you're overseas without your cell phone trying to navigate the battlefield, this information actually makes it your survival a lot more effective. Right? You have to know where things could go in order for you to prepare for the worst and hope for the best and take whatever happens in between. You have to know what the worst could be, and the worst could be not having technology anymore. The worst could be not having functional running water on a regular basis, not having usable electricity on a regular basis, not having access to transportation on a regular basis. And you need to be able to plan for realistically 3 to 6 months worth of being able to endure that, because in a functional society, especially here in America, you have the capabilities to rebuild the infrastructure. Unless it's been destroyed by a nuclear holocaust, you have the ability to rebuild the infrastructure within a couple of months, depending on how bad the damage is. Because one of the first things that we do after a natural disaster, is try to get the power back. Try to get the power back, try to get the water back running. And then we start trying to ship food into the city. But they can't get the power back on until the storm is clear, until the disaster is clear. And then they have to clear the rubble so that they can get to the transformers and everything like that to get the power back on and get the water back on. So the time it takes for them to get to you, that's how long you have to survive. So 3 to 6 months worth of survival skills, 3 to 6 months worth of resources, that's a realistic number to hold. A year to 2 years, that's like pandemic level preparations. But since we've already experienced a pandemic in our lifestyle, where we were out of work for 12 months and experiencing pandemic level behavior for 18 months, having 6 to 18 months worth of reserves just in case another pandemic happened again in our lifetime would be realistic. Having it for our children as a teachable behavior pattern so that they're ready for this in case it happens in their lifetime is realistic. Because if it's happened before, it can happen again. So being codependent on technology is not beneficial for you. Utilizing technology as a tool to expedite performance and productivity, to delegate responsibilities appropriately and responsibly so that you can redirect your attention to other more dire necessities and tasks and obligations, is effective for the usage of technology. But codependency towards technology, where everything that you need, like I just watched a movie the other day on Netflix. I'm always watching movies on Netflix. But these kids, and this is like a 2016 movie, where these kids were living in a house where Alexa was their babysitter, right? And the damn machine turned on. The fact is that they couldn't go into the fridge without the machine doing it for them. They couldn't change the channel, turn up or down the thermostat, open or close a door. They couldn't do anything without this machine. When the machine stopped functioning, they couldn't even get out of the house, right? Too much codependency on technology puts you in a vulnerable situation. And when that technology defects, whether it's one of those sci-fi like robot Eureka kind of situations that turns the humans into prisoners kind of situation, or if it just defects and just stops working. Biometric locked doors that stay locked when the power goes out, that's not effective. Equally, if they automatically unlock when the power goes out, that's not effective either, because that leads to a break-in. Somebody cuts the power to break into your house. If they cut the power, all the locks unlock. You are no longer secured. Having manual locks is the most effective way to keep yourself secured while giving yourself the ability to get out, right? Again, one of the things that we don't have, that we used to have back in Michael's day and back in my day, was a emergency escape plan. In case of a fire, which direction do you go to get out of your house? The average person doesn't know that. Most of us have a one-way in, one-way out apartment. Not a lot of us have a house with more than one exit to it. But if you did, which direction would you go? Would you try to go and collect your valuables before you run out of the house, or would you dive out the closest window? Are you on the ground floor, or do you have to take stairs? If you have a 2-story house, how many people with a 2-story house have a fire escape outside of the house? It's not an attractive design. But if your kids are on the second floor and the staircase is on fire, do you want them to jump off of the roof, or do you want them to have the ability to climb down some stairs out of their bedroom window? Now, yes, I understand that if you have a fire escape outside of the bedroom window and there isn't a fire, that the kids can sneak out at night. But if you teach your children responsibility, they shouldn't sneak out at night. They should just walk out the fucking front door. It is the principle of being prepared. Now I understand. Some people are going to say, man, Xander's paranoid today. No. Being prepared is paranoia is being overly prepared at the most inopportune time, meaning that you have more than enough to resolve a more severe situation. But since you're not in that situation, you got a lot of stuff that you don't need yet. But when it does become a thing, what are you going to do about it? If you have a two-story house and a fire that sets your staircase on fire, your kids can't get from the first floor to from the second floor to the first floor. What is their exit plan? And now that you're listening to this, you're probably going to go and try to find a way to makeshift some stairs onto the side of the house so that they can climb out of the window and make their way down the stair. Put a fucking Batman and Robin pole outside of it. At the very least, teach your children. First of all, keep extra linen in their house and change their bed sheets, but then teach your children how to take their bed sheets and tie them together and make a rope and tie it to something heavy in the house so that they can shimmy down the window like Batman and Robin if they don't have a staircase. Teach them how to keep themselves alive. These are things that we were taught when we were kids, and when it became necessary, we knew what to do and we were able to survive catastrophic behavior. But these days, the average person will ball up in a corner and cry until the firefighters get there instead of saving themselves. Back in the 80s and 90s, before we had a social media, everybody would be outside of the house watching the house burn down when a firefighter shows up. Now, motherfuckers be still in the house, hanging out the window. Help! But you could have been outside. You should only be in that situation if you're on the 18th floor of an apartment complex. This is the difference between the way we were as Gen Xers and the way things have become in the Gen Z era. Because the most valuable tool that you will ever have in any lifetime is going to be the one between your ears, which is your brain. Okay? So we got to make sure that we equip that tool very well with the skill set necessary to function. I know y'all seen some of those sci-fi movies where somebody comes out of a hyperbolic time chamber or some weird shit, and then they get injected with a lot of knowledge and information so that they can function in the modern era. Because the most effective thing that you can have in your daily life is your brain, your capability to know what to do and get stuff done. We identify that as street smarts, but it's a skill set that is learned from past experience, either from you directly or somebody that you know. So why do we, in an era of technology where people were born around TikTok and Instagram and a Snapchat, do we not know or remember what life was like before color TV? We should still be able to teach our children how to function without online. We should be able to teach our children how to function without cell phones, how to maintain communication with one another when a cell phone dies or when it breaks, how to pass information along without the accessibility of a mailman, right? No email, no text messages, no mailman. How do we get information from one person to the next? We've got to remember these things, right? Because it is valuable information. And if it's not passed on from generation to generation, it ultimately becomes lost. And like Michael said, he could probably find a book on how to can resources and preserve them in the house. It is still a skill set that has to be learned before it can be implemented. And in a technological era, not too many people are going to Google that to learn it, to implement it. It ultimately is the type of behavior that comes from a certain culture, maybe a farmer's culture or the Amish culture. But the modern inner city lifestyle of the average individual, less likely are we going to be putting so much effort into canning our products where we can just go buy them canned at the store. But it is more effective for you to remember to buy your pre-canned items and put them on the shelves in your house instead of filling your house full of meats. And I think that's probably the only other thing that canned products makes more sense than pre-canning your products, because who the hell is going to slaughter their own cow, portion that shit out to a 18-ounce mason jar, heat that son bitch up, vacuum seal it, put it on the shelf, when you can just go buy you some Progresso soup with the damn beef in it. The effort is impractical. You have to find a practical way to take modern technology and old school skill sets, put them together, and utilize a level of survival skills that has long since been forgotten. That way, you'll be fully functional under both dynamics. So, we've gone through a lot today. I'm going to start by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to ask you ladies to make it make sense. Ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, I give you this information to make you guys higher value men, not just by improving your financial skills, but also by improving your decision-making skills. Ladies, while this is a male-driven podcast from a male's perspective, you too can make yourself a higher value woman, but prioritizing your 20 and 30-year plan is going to be the best way to do that. Reverse engineering that to what you need to do today, and then stick to that and keep your eyes and ears open for the potential suitor with the right personality and characteristics, drive, ambition, dedication, motivation, admiration, and integrity to achieve their own goals, right? Then pay attention to their goals and see if their goals are long-term satisfaction goals, not short-term gratification goals, because you both can be heading in the same direction where you don't have to have the same goals. But by heading in the same direction with your goals, you guys can conquer each other's goals a whole lot faster. And that's why I tell you, in those dynamics, that two people can make it to $1 million faster than one. It requires you to both have the same financial upbringing or patterns of behavior. Even if you didn't learn this when you were children, if you learn it from me and y'all implement it in your lifestyles, either way, it's got to be the same ideologies. Long-term satisfaction over short-term gratification. So, special shout out to Michael, OG Kicks, Steven, Joe Jack, FX Trader. I really appreciate you guys for coming to tonight's show. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see you guys tomorrow night.
Higher ground! Used to chase validation, now I validate That's my personal command.